The moment I finished drinking the glass of milk my girlfriend Lin Xingxing had personally handed to me, I felt my eyelids growing unimaginably heavy, as if pulled down by lead weights. My consciousness began slipping away, draining from my physical framework like sinking quicksand. I completely lost track of the timeline, having no concept of how long had elapsed. My soul felt completely detached, as if floating aimlessly through an unfamiliar void-like space. Suddenly, a faint but highly familiar voice began transmitting directly into my auditory network. It was Jiang Qingfei, the ride-or-die best friend of Lin Xingxing. The one who was constantly speaking up and getting fiercely defensive on my behalf. Xingxing, have you completely lost your mind, oh? She kept her voice forced down into a hushed whisper, yet it violently vibrated with an unmistakable trembling panic. Are you seriously intending to keep Shen Luyun completely in the dark? While you harvest his kidney just to force feed it into Sun Xiu. His specific biological matrix is the absolute only match that can achieve a successful graft. Lin Xingxing's voice cut through the air, dropping to an absolutely chilling, terrifying calm, as if she were merely reviewing a mundane report that had zero connection to her own life. Xiu's system is completely redlining and can no longer wait for another donor. He is literally on the absolute brink of a total system shutdown. As for Shen Luyun, you will see it. She paused her speech pattern for a brief moment, her tone remaining completely flat and emotionless, as if she were casually discussing the daily weather broadcast. I will ensure he receives an absolute fortune in compensation. Hasn't his core objective always been to marry into my life yet? The exact moment this surgical operation is successfully completed, I will launch a formal marriage proposal to him. I will stay locked into his network, never severing our bond for the rest of our lives. The harsh, ear-splitting crash of laboratory glassware shattering against the hard tiles suddenly erupted. Jiang Qingfei completely lost control, practically screaming at the top of her lungs. He will be down a vital organ permanently bricked. What earthly use is your pathetic compensation after you've mutilated his body? Lin Xingxing, I genuinely cannot decode what kind of toxic mind-altering poison Sun Xiu has injected into your brain. Back when that catastrophic earthquake hit me, you completely sacrificed your own lower limbs, becoming permanently crippled just to save his skin tone, which directly caused you to be purged from your family's massive inheritance line. Yet the very second he stabilized, he ghosted you and ran off to a foreign server with another woman. During those dark, agonizing cycles of your life, who was the one staying synced by your side, nursing you back to health? It was Shen Luyuna. Just to master the precise acupuncture techniques needed to restore your nerves, he used his own flesh as a human guinea pig, mutilating both of his own legs until they were completely covered in horrific purple bruises, and just to beg that legendary medical grandmaster to initialize your treatment protocol, he literally remained on his knees outside that man's compound for an entire grueling month each week. Now the moment Sun Xiu returns to this server and witnesses your massive corporate comeback, he immediately leeches back onto you like a toxic parasite. And the exact instant he downloaded the data that you were carrying Shen Luyun's child, he threw a massive tantrum, sobbing and screaming like a lunatic. And what did you do? The exact second he squeezed out a few fake tears, you secretly swallowed illegal abortion pills and intentionally flushed away your very first biological child. To this very day, Shen Luyun genuinely believes it was entirely his fault for failing to protect the baby, spiraling into a severe, crippling depression that lasted for 3 agonizing months. And now, you have the absolute audacity to harvest his freaking kidney, just to hand it over to Sun Xiu enough. Lin Xingxing abruptly detonated, her volume piercing through the roof, with absolute unshakable coldness. I am well aware that Shen Luyun loves me to the point of sacrificing his entire existence, and I know damn well that Sun Xiu is a selfish, narcissistic piece of absolute trash. She sucked in a deep, heavy breath. But I don't give a damn. I love Sun Xiu. I love him so much it completely drives me insane. Then what about Shen Luyun? Jiang Qingfei's voice choked up violently with heavy tears. What the hell is he supposed to be to you? He is absolutely nothing to me. My final decision is already set in stone. No one can talk me out of this today. It's completely useless. I will harvest his kidney no matter what. The exact millisecond those lethal words escaped her lips, I felt an icy, terrifying surgical blade slicing ruthlessly through my bare skin. The anesthesiologist had severely underestimated my body's extreme drug resistance, rendering every single millimeter of the agonizing incision blindingly crystal clear. The excruciating pain drilled directly from my torn flesh straight into my bone marrow. But compared to the sheer physical torture consuming my body, what hurt infinitely more was the living heart inside my chest being slowly sliced to ribbons. I had relentlessly loved Lin Xingxing for 10 whole years. from the tender age of 16 all the way to 26. My prime youth, my fiery passion, and absolutely every shred of my existence had been poured into her without a single reservation. I silently watched her lose her mind chasing after Sun Siu, and watched her collapse into absolute hopeless ruins after he ruthlessly dumped her. I was the sole person who dragged her through the pitch black hell of being paralyzed, enduring her explosive temper tantrums and severe toxic mood swings. And I was even violently shoved to the floor by her during her manic emotional breakdowns, leaving my knees completely smashed and covered in gruesome purple bruises. Yet I never uttered a single word of complaint, choosing instead to silently pick myself up and continue guarding her like a loyal shadow. I genuinely believed that even the coldest block of ice could eventually be melted with enough warmth, and that one day she would finally turn around and notice my devotion. But as it turns out in her twisted eyes, I was never anything more than a worthless nobody. 10 whole years, an entire decade of my life, even after we survived so many catastrophic hardships together. The absolute only occupant of her black heart has always been Sun Siu, because of a single pathetic word from Sun Siu. She ruthlessly and systematically murdered our unborn child. And because Sun Siu desperately required a matching kidney, she didn't hesitate to completely blindside me, butchering my physical body to offer it up as a human sacrifice. I lost all track of how much agonizing time ticked by, until I felt a vital organ being violently, brutally ripped from my inner torso. It was my vital kidney, and with it every single ounce of the love I had harbored for her over the last 10 years. The second I finally drifted back into consciousness, the suffocating pungent stench of hospital disinfectant assaulted my senses, making my blurry eyes sting with bitter water. "Oh, you're finally awake," a woman's familiar voice drifted over from the doorway. My entire body instantaneously paralyzed, and I slowly, painfully hoisted my gaze upward. Lin Xing stood directly in the threshold, silhouetted against the harsh light, her slender figure casting a chilling, aloof shadow across the room. She took a slow step forward, those long, thin legs beneath her pristine white dress moving gracefully. Yet every single step felt like she was stomping directly onto my already heavily butchered heart. She casually sat down at the edge of my mattress, extending her hand to softly caress my face, her fingertips tracing the cold tracks of silent tears pooling at the corners of my eyes. She knitted her brows together in a look of faux concern. "Does it hurt terribly?" I stared dead into the depth of her eyes, feeling as though my living heart was being brutally squeezed by a ruthless invisible fist, causing an excruciating agony that left me gasping for air. How could she possibly possess the absolute audacity to ask if I'm in pain using such a tender voice? How could she literally carve out my vital organ with her own hands, ruthlessly terminate our biological child, and still sit right here by my bedside without a single shred of guilt, staring down at me with such deeply concerned, loving eyes? What happened to me? I managed to choke out the words, my voice so raspy and pulverized, it didn't even sound human. Lin Xing's poker face didn't betray a single micro-expression, and her tone remained flawlessly warm and soothing. "You suffered a sudden severe case of acute appendicitis. The surgery is already fully complete." Appendicitis. A hollow, self-deprecating laugh escaped my lips, and the hot tears instantly broke containment, cascading down my face uncontrollably. She couldn't even be bothered to construct a semi-believable lie, seeing my tears flooding down so aggressively that she couldn't wipe them away fast enough. She remained completely, utterly oblivious to the true reason, genuinely assuming I was just reacting to the intense physical trauma of the incision. She hurriedly scrambled to her feet. "Hold on, let me get the chief doctor right away." The moment the words left her mouth, she rapidly vanished out to the door. But after she walked out that afternoon, she never set foot in that room again. 3 agonizing hours later, a nurse pushed the door open to change my medical dressings, quietly muttering under her breath, "Man, CEO Lin is completely devoted to Mr. Sun." She kept watch by his bedside all night long, and the absolute second she heard Mr. Sun woke up and craved porridge from that legendary old-school shop across town, she immediately braved the torrential downpour and drove out to get it. Listening to her words, I completely lost control, as a fresh wave of bitter tears flooded from my eyes. So that was the real reason she vanished and never looked back. She was so completely convinced of my undying devotion, confident that I loved her too much to ever throw a tantrum, that she couldn't even be bothered to do the bare minimum and text me a fake excuse. "Lin Xing, did I Shen Luyuan really seem that pathetic and spineless in your eyes? Were you really that certain that I would keep chasing you, loving you blindly without a single shred of self-respect?" I stared blankly out the window, my tear ducts completely drained and dry. I have no clue how many hours I spent dissociated in absolute silence. But the moment the nurse finally exited the room, I fished out my phone, my thumb hovering over the illuminated screen for a brief heartbeat, before I ultimately dialed a number that was permanently seared into my brain. The call connected and a deep, sultry, and incredibly relaxed female voice vibrated from the receiver. "Mr. Shen." I sucked in a sharp, heavy breath, my voice barely a whisper yet crystal clear. "He Jixin, would you have any interest in marrying me?" The other end of the line instantaneously fell dead silent for a brief second. You've dialed the wrong number. I am not Lin Xingxing. I know exactly who you are, I muttered, white-knuckling my phone. I am explicitly asking you. I have absolutely no intention of marrying Lin Xingxing anymore. Jixin's curiosity seemed to be instantly piqued, her tone lazily arching upward with amusement. Oh, and what makes you think I would ever agree to marry you? I closed my eyes tightly, my voice completely flat and devoid of any emotion. Because you have always utterly despised Lin Xingxing, and because... I paused for a heavy beat, delivering each word with lethal precision. That candid profile photograph resting on your executive desk is me. An absolute suffocating deathly silence consumed the line. I lost track of how much time trickled by in that quiet void, until the faint, crisp flick of a lighter echoed through the earpiece. Jixin's velvety, seductive voice laced with the subtle aroma of expensive tobacco softly drifted over. How exactly did you find out? I stared hollowly at the stark, blindingly white ceiling of my hospital room, as the cold medicine inside the IV tube slowly dripped down drop by drop, like a cruel countdown timer ticking away the final remnants of my foolish devotion. You only need to answer me one simple thing. Are you willing or not? The other end of the line plunged into a tense, suffocating 2-second silence, before the woman finally broke her composure and spoke. Her breathing pattern sounded subtly frantic and uneven, and her tone carried a heavy weight of deeply suppressed emotion. 7 days. Bring your ass to my side within 7 days, and we will officially register our marriage. Furthermore, she paused for a calculated beat, her voice suddenly dropping into a freezing, razor-sharp edge. Once you become my husband, you are strictly forbidden from ever having any contact with Lin Xingxing again. I closed my eyes tightly, my voice incredibly faint, yet completely unshakable. I won't. After 7 days, I will never lay eyes on her again. The moment she hung up the phone, I immediately booked a one-way flight departing exactly 7 days from now. Throughout the entire following day, Lin Xingxing didn't show her face even once. Only a private caregiver pushed the door open to check on me, speaking in a highly respectful, formal tone. Mr. Shen, CEO Lin is completely tied up with critical corporate matters, so she hired us to take top-tier care of you. I let out a flat, indifferent grunt in response, not even bothered to expose her blatant lies. I knew damn well she wasn't actually busy with work. She was merely guarding Sun Xiu's bedside, refusing to leave his side for a single second. It wasn't until the literal afternoon of my hospital discharge that Lin Xingxing finally graced me with her presence. She was dressed in a stunning, form-fitting designer dress, a noticeable wave of exhaustion lingering between her brows. Yet she was still breathtakingly gorgeous enough to make anyone's heart skip a beat. Seeing that I had already completely packed up all my belongings and was standing quietly by the doorway, she quickly picked up her pace and strode over to me, extending her hand in an attempt to take my heavy luggage. Her voice dripping with deep guilt. I'm so incredibly sorry. Lu Yun, the company has been an absolute chaotic mess lately. And on top of that, I've been orchestrating a massive surprise for you, which is the only reason I couldn't be here to accompany you. I smoothly sidestepped her reaching hand, gripping the handles myself as I walked right past her. Oh, what kind of surprise? The corners of her lips curled up into a subtle smirk, a rare genuine softness blooming in the depths of her cold eyes. Let me take you to a special place. Exactly half an hour later, the luxury car smoothly pulled up right outside the grand entrance of a 5-star hotel. I silently followed her as she led the way inside. And the exact millisecond she pushed open the heavy double doors of the grand banquet hall, an absolute sea of crimson roses and flickering candlelight instantly flooded my vision. It was surreal, as it felt an elaborate marriage proposal setup. The gathered VIP guests instantly whipped their heads around, every single pair of eyes locking directly onto me. Lin Xingxing tightly grasped my fingers and guided me straight to the epicenter of the room, before pulling a massive shimmering diamond ring from her pocket. Lu Yun, she locked her soft gaze dead onto mine, her voice deep, magnetic, and completely serious. Will you make me the happiest woman alive and marry me? I stood there absolutely paralyzed, staring blankly down at her, feeling as though my living heart was being brutally squeezed by that same ruthless, invisible fist. Oh, how desperately I had craved this exact milestone in the past. But looking down at this exquisitely cut, dazzling diamond ring right now, I was hit with nothing but a sickening sense of absolute irony. This heavily anticipated proposal I had practically begged for over the years was actually purchased by bartering away my own vital kidney. I opened my mouth, fully prepared to cold-bloodedly reject her right then and there, when the heavy doors of the grand banquet hall were violently thrust open from the outside. I'm so incredibly sorry for ruining this. I'm late, a fragile, paper-thin whisper drifted through the venue, and I turned around to see Sun Xiu, dressed in a pristine white designer shirt, standing weakly at the threshold, his complexion completely ghost white, as theatrical tears welled up in his eyes. Xing Xing, Lu Yun. Sun Xiu stumbled his way over to where we stood, his voice choking up with performance-ready tears. Everything that happened back then was entirely my fault. I never should have kept leeching onto Xing during these past few weeks in some omitit. I caught wind that you were proposing today, so I forced myself out of bed just to personally deliver my final blessings. He unzipped his designer bag, retrieving 2 luxury gift boxes and offering them to us. I truly hope the 2 of you live happily ever after. The moment the words left his lips, he spun around to stage his dramatic exit, but before he could even complete 2 fragile steps, his entire body violently wobbled out of balance, and he collapsed face first onto the hard floor, completely unconscious. See you? Lin Xingxing's poker face instantaneously shattered into pure panic. She violently bolted upright from her kneeling position, blitzing across the floor without a single millisecond of hesitation, and they desperately scooped Sun Xiu's limp body up into her arms. She completely forgot that she was literally in the middle of proposing to me, entirely oblivious to the fact that the unaccepted diamond ring was still clutched in her white-knuckled fist. The entire banquet hall instantaneously erupted into absolute chaos, as a wave of toxic judgmental whispers broke out among the guests. Wow, what a surprise, it's happening all over again. The absolute millisecond CEO Lin catches a glimpse of Sun Xiu. Everyone else in the entire world instantly becomes invisible to her. Shen Luyun literally sacrificed a decade of his life to stay by her side. Yet he still can't compete with a single dramatic glance from Sun Xiu. The only true master of her black heart has always been Sun Xiu. I stood frozen in the exact same spot, my fingernails digging violently into my palms until they practically drew blood. I silently watched Lin Xingxing cradle Sun Xiu as she frantically sprinted out of the venue, catching the subtle smug smirk on Sun Xiu's face as he locked eyes with me from her arms and mouthed, "Oh, you will never beat me." Such a pathetic amateur piece of acting, though. Yet, Lin Xingxing didn't possess a single brain cell of suspicion before swallowing it whole. Unsurprisingly, Lin Xingxing never returned home that night. I sat completely alone in the pitch-black bedroom, systematically tearing the place apart to unearth every single item tied to her existence, hushly chucking them into a massive cardboard box. That was until my hands brushed against a tiny, incredibly soft pastel pink outfit. I fiercely white-knuckled that small piece of baby clothing, and against my absolute will, my swollen eyes instantly flushed a painful deep crimson once again. Back when she first discovered she was pregnant with my child, we used to lay in bed together, eagerly counting down the days until that precious new life would arrive, fantasizing about walking down the aisle and growing old together. But that innocent 3-month-old fetus was ultimately cold-bloodedly murdered by her own hands. I forcefully suppressed the agonizing stabbing pain detonating in my chest, hoisted the heavy box overflowing with 10 years of toxic memories, and marched straight outside to hurl it into the bottom of the dumpster. The physical garbage was officially discarded, and along with it, every single drop of devotion I had harbored for Lin Xingxing over the last decade was permanently gone. The very next morning, I marched directly into the headquarters of the Lin Corporation to resign. Years ago, when she was a helpless cripple confined to a wheelchair, her family inheritance was brutally stripped away, and her toxic half-brother completely plundered everything she owned. The absolute second her legs miraculously recovered, the first reckless move she made was signing a high-stakes corporate bet ad Concise, demanding she double the company's net profits within 3 years just to reclaim her stolen birthright. To ensure she wouldn't fail, I abandoned my own future to work as her personal assistant, braving elite corporate dinners and binge-drinking alcohol on her behalf, until I literally suffered severe internal stomach bleeding, and pulling consecutive all-nighters until I collapsed unconscious from exhaustion. I endured that living hell purely fueled by my absolute infatuation for her. But what did I ultimately receive in return for my loyalty? Thankfully, I will never be that tragically pathetic and blind ever again. The moment word spread through the departments that I was officially resigning, the entire corporate office instantaneously erupted into absolute chaos. Practically every single coworker begged me to reconsider. Luyun bro, are you seriously abandoning us and walking out? Is there absolutely no way you can stay a bit longer? Yeah, you're literally the backbone of this entire firm. Why are you packing up out of nowhere? Every single one of us was personally trained and brought up by you. How are we even supposed to survive without our mentor? Besides, CEO Lin literally can't function without you by her side. Can't function without me. She doesn't have me around right now. And yet, she's living her absolute best life, isn't she? I let out a hollow, self-deprecating chuckle as my lips twitched bitterly. I've just genuinely reached my limit and need to disappear for a long rest. These past few years have been a completely exhausting waking nightmare. Trust me, no one ever drops dead just because someone walks out of their life. You guys are going to thrive just fine. And she will be completely perfectly fine too. After bidding my final farewells to the emotional crowd, I clutched the small box of my personal effects and walked out of the corporate building for good. The exact millisecond I stepped back into my empty house, Lin Sing-sing's caller ID flashed aggressively across my phone screen. Her voice radiated a rare, genuine wave of absolute shock. You actually handed in your resignation. I replied with absolute eerie calmness, I'm about to get married, so I'll be way too tied up with personal matters to continue working. She didn't seem to think twice about my cryptic choice of words, blindly assuming I had officially accepted her dramatic proposal from the other night, and was simply swamped with preparing for our upcoming wedding. Her stiff tone instantly softened into a gentle murmur. I'm so sorry, a massive corporate project just popped up and I have to travel out of town, so I won't be able to stay by your side to help plan the wedding. I maintained a heavy, dead silence. But the next second, Sun Siu's sickeningly sweet, clingy voice drifted through the receiver. Sing Sing, babe. Thank you so much for washing these fresh strawberries for me. Lin Sing Sing's voice instantaneously became muffled as she pulled the phone away. Stop playing around? Can't you see I'm literally in the middle of an important phone call? You go so. But Sun Siu refused to back down, whining aggressively. Are you going to eat this bite or not? Fine, if you won't let me feed you. I'll just take my love and go find some other woman to pamper me. The call was abruptly and frantically cut off. A familiar stabbing agony flared deep within my chest, and with trembling fingers I opened up my social media feed. Unsurprisingly, Sun Siu had just posted a brand new update featuring a candid photo. It showed Lin Sing Sing wearing a cute kitchen apron carefully slicing fresh fruit, captioned, "Genuinely nothing beats the feeling of being completely spoiled and cherished by your favorite person." The post was an absolute undisputed declaration of war aimed directly at me. I closed my eyes tightly in absolute exhaustion, and aggressively clicked the power button to kill the glowing screen. It wasn't until the dead of winter night that I was violently jolted awake by the shrill, frantic blasting of my ringtone. Zhang Qingfei's completely panicked, hysterical voice exploded through the earpiece. Luyun Xing, she threw herself in harm's way just to shield Sun Siu, and she's just been brutally stabbed over a dozen times. She is currently experiencing massive life-threatening blood loss, and the hospital's emergency blood bank is completely depleted. There's absolutely not enough blood on hand. Both Yu and Sun Siu happen to possess the exact rare matching blood type she needs. But Sun Siu made a massive scene claiming he just underwent a kidney transplant and was physically too fragile to donate before completely ghosting the hospital. He literally just bolted out the doors and ran away. Can you please find it in your heart to come down here and save her life, Mapgyo? An intense, deafening buzzing noise instantaneously erupted in my ears, as an absolute tidal wave of severe bitterness violently surged up from my soul. I also just lost a vital kidney to save someone else. Did anyone bother to consider whether my body could handle a massive blood donation? On the other end of the line, Zhang Qingfei's voice was completely choked up with frantic, heavy tears. Luyun, please, I am begging you on my hands and knees. If we don't pump fresh blood into her right this second, she is genuinely going to end up in a body bag. Sun Siu proved to be a completely useless, spineless coward. And right now, you are the absolute only person left on this earth who can pull her back from the brink. She kept desperately recycling the exact same pleas over and over again, while I maintained a heavy frozen silence, my entire brain spiraling into absolute chaos. After what felt like an eternity, I realized I still couldn't bring myself to do it. I simply lacked the cold-blooded cruelty to just stand by and watch someone die. I threw on a heavy winter coat and frantically rushed over to the hospital. Inside the sterile blood donation clinic, I lay flat on the hard, narrow hospital cot, silently watching my dark crimson blood slowly drain out through the plastic tubing. My physical frame was already severely compromised and weak from my secret surgery, and as the needle kept drawing, waves of blinding darkness began aggressively crashing over my vision, until my entire consciousness finally fractured and I blacked out completely. The second I forced my heavy eyelids open again, it was already noon the following day. I braced my trembling arms against the mattress to sit up, desperate to discharge myself, and figured I would briefly check on Lin Xingxing's medical condition on my way out. But the absolute millisecond I approached the entrance of her private VIP ward, the muffled voices of her and Zhang Qingfei engaged in a heated conversation drifted through the door. Sing, you literally took over a dozen brutal knife wounds just to shield Sun Siu. And the absolute second things got ugly, he backstabbed you and bolted once again. If Luyun hadn't rushed here to donate his own blood to save your ungrateful ass, only you would be lying dead in the morgue right now. When the hell are you finally going to snap out of this delusion and actually start treating Luyun with the respect he deserves? Lin. Jingxing fell into a heavy, suffocating silence for a few seconds, before her voice drifted out incredibly deep and fiercely defensive. Siu literally just underwent major surgery to receive a brand new kidney. His immune system is incredibly compromised, so it's completely natural that he panicked and left. Don't villainize him for protecting his health. Zhang Qingfei was so profoundly choked by her words, she practically choked on her own breath. Sun Xiu's health is compromised, and you think Shen Luyun is perfectly fine. Just open your damn eyes and look at how catastrophically he has ruined his own body for you over the years. You keep taking him for granted and stabbing him in the back like this. Aren't you even a little terrified that he'll find out and vanish from your life forever? Lin Xingxing's response radiated an absolute unshakable audacity. He would never. Shen Luyun's infatuation with me is ironclad. It's the exact same way I am hopelessly obsessed with Sun Xiu. He will absolutely never abandon me. I stood frozen in the hallway, forced to swallow that chilling definitive declaration. He will absolutely never abandon me. My living heart felt as though it were being brutally ground to shreds by a dull rusted blade. The excruciating agony leaving me completely gasping for air. So this was the textbook definition of toxic security. The enabled monster has absolutely zero fear of consequences. But Lin Xingxing, you have severely miscalculated. Every single ounce of my love for you is officially dead. Which means this time around, I am wiping my slate clean and walking out forever. Just as I was about to pivot and walk away from the door, Lin Xingxing's phone violently blared to life inside the room. See you. Her icy tone instantaneously melted into sickeningly sweet tenderness. What's wrong, babe? Sun Xiu's heavily theatrical sobbing voice echoed through the speaker, rendering the specific words completely muffled from where I stood. But Lin Xingxing's face instantaneously twisted into absolute panic. She violently threw the heavy medical blankets off her body, ruthlessly ripping the IV needle straight out from the back of her hand, causing dark crimson blood to instantaneously ooze out onto her skin. Yet she acted completely immune to the physical trauma, snatching her designer jacket as she prepared to bolt. Xingxing. Zhang Qingfei fiercely white-knuckled her arm to hold her back. Your internal wounds are nowhere near healed yet. The chief surgeon made it crystal clear. You are strictly forbidden from leaving this hospital room. Lin Xingxing violently shook off her desperate grip, her voice dropping into a freezing clinical edge. Siyu just told me that he's suffering from a bad bout of insomnia. I need to get over to his apartment and cradle him to sleep right now. Zhang Qingfei's face turned completely livid with absolute rage. You are literally throwing your own life into the gutter for that leech. Then what about Shen Luyun? He literally just drained his own veins to save your ungrateful ass. Have you even bothered to utter a single syllable to check if he's alive? Lin Xingxing's frantic footsteps abruptly halted for a fraction of a second, but she ultimately refused to turn her head around. She didn't even bother to fully put on her jacket, violently thrusting the door open to stage her exit, entirely failing to notice my ghostly silhouette standing right there in the corridor. I quietly watched her frantic silhouette completely dissolve at the very end of the corridor, plunging into a heavy dead silence that lasted for what felt like an eternity, before I ultimately just let out a soft self-deprecating chuckle. I really should have acclimated to this toxic reality by now. The exact millisecond Sun Xiu squeezes out a tear, her entire universe undergoes a catastrophic apocalyptic meltdown. Meanwhile, even if Shen Luyun literally drained every single drop of blood from my veins for her, she wouldn't even deem me worthy of a single passing glance. Exactly 2 days later, Lin Xingxing finally deigned to return to our shared house. The precise moment she pushed the front door open, I was sitting casually on the living room sofa organizing my one-way flight tickets and identification papers. Luyun, she glided over to where I sat, her tone carrying a rare, highly uncharacteristic softness. Word reached me that you were the one who donated blood to save my life. Why the hell would you be so tragically foolish, Ibo? I kept my absolute composure, smoothly tucking my travel documents completely out of sight, without even bothered to lift my gaze to meet hers. As long as you didn't end up in a body bag, nothing else matters. She seemed completely oblivious to my freezing, detached demeanor, intrusively sliding onto the cushion right beside me, as she reached out to firmly interlock her fingers with mine. The proposal set up the other night was brutally ruined by Siu's sudden medical emergency. This time around, I've fully arranged a brand new banquet to completely make it up to you. I finally shifted my cold, piercing gaze upward to look dead into her eyes, only just now noticing that her complexion was incredibly sickly and ghost white, an obvious consequence of suffering severe catastrophic blood loss, and aggressively refusing to give her body a single second of proper bed rest. Let's just forget about it, I muttered in a barely audible whisper. What if Sun Xiu magically suffers another convenient fainting spell? She knitted her brows together, her voice radiating absolute unshakable certainty. That is absolutely not going to happen this time. I purposefully blacklisted him from the guest list. A faint smile broke across my lips, realizing she was entirely too dense to comprehend the sheer mockery behind my words. But I chose not to waste another single breath on an explanation, simply nodding my head in silent passive compliance. While we were officially en route to the banquet hall, Lin Xingxing took the driver's seat, while I sat quietly in the passenger side, staring hollowly out the window at the blurred city skyline rapidly flashing past us. Suddenly, her smartphone violently shattered the silence with an aggressive ring. The absolute microsecond she picked up Sun Sio's gut-wrenching, hysterical shrieking instantly exploded through the speakerphone like a ticking bomb. Sing Sing, help me. I've been brutally targeted and kidnapped. They explicitly told me they are going to murder me. Lin Sing Sing's face instantaneously drained of all color, turning completely skeletal. As she violently slammed her foot down onto the brake pedal, frantically pulling up a real-time GPS tracking map on her phone screen where a hostile crimson dot was flashing aggressively. Hold the hell on, Xiao Mibal, she roared through her teeth, violently whipping the steering wheel around, as the luxury vehicle pulled a brutal screeching U-turn and rocketed toward the desolate outskirts of the city at breakneck speed. The massive G-force of the sudden reckless drift violently hurled me sideways, crashing my head brutally against the passenger window with a sickening thud. Warm blood instantly broke containment cascading down my brow. Yet Lin Sing Sing didn't even blink to check if I was breathing. Her hyper-focused gaze was completely consumed by Sun Sio's critical survival. The car aggressively weaved through highway traffic like a lethal weapon, before screeching to a chaotic halt on a deserted, crumbling bridge. A blinding torrential downpour was absolutely hammering down, completely obscuring the figures lurking in the distance, allowing me to only faintly discern Sun Xiu shivering with a razor-sharp blade pressed directly against his throat, standing helplessly at the absolute edge of the bridge. Lin Sing Sing, you finally showed your miserable face. The unhinged abductor shrieked hysterically into the storm. You systematically annihilated my entire corporate empire and drove my beloved wife to commit suicide. So today, I am going to force you to watch the absolute love of your life die. Lin Sing Sing threw her door open and stepped out into the elements, the freezing rain instantaneously soaking her clothes to the skin. Yet she acted completely immune to the biting cold, as she advanced forward one deliberate calculated step at a time. You have severely miscalculated this entire situation. Her voice cutting through the heavy rain with absolute sub-zero frigidity. The person you are holding hostage isn't the love of my life. The criminal instantaneously froze into absolute confusion, the sharp edge of his blade drifting slightly from the skin. What the hell did you say? Lin Sing Sing delivered her lines with lethal calculating coldness. Clearly your pathetic background check was garbage. The piece of trash you kidnapped is nothing but my deadbeat ex-boyfriend. Back when my legs were paralyzed, he ruthlessly abandoned me like garbage. And I absolutely loathe his entire existence. She let out a mocking theatrical scoff, before pivoting her head to lock her gaze directly onto me inside the vehicle, her eyes suddenly radiating a profound, intoxicating devotion that could literally drown a man. The person I truly cherish with all my soul is sitting right there. He is the only man who has faithfully guarded my side through all these brutal years. I sat there completely paralyzed, my brain short-circuiting. This was the absolute first time in 10 years Lin Sing Sing had ever looked at me with such profound adoration. Yet it was happening in the most horrific, manipulative context imaginable. The kidnapper cast a deeply suspicious, paranoid glare back toward me, and Lin Sing Sing instantly seized the opening to continue her calculated psychological game. If you want to slaughter Sun Xiu, go right ahead and paint the bridge with him. Lu Yun and I have a mandatory wedding dress-fitting appointment to attend tomorrow. I don't have a single second to waste on your pathetic games. The absolute second the words left her mouth, she gracefully extended her hand toward me, her voice dripping with pure fabricated tenderness. Lu Yun, let's get out of here. An absolute sub-zero chill instantly paralyzed my entire body. In that horrific moment, the ugly truth finally clicked in my brain. Lin Sing Sing was cold-bloodedly weaponizing me as a human shield, intentionally manipulating the unhinged kidnapper to shift his lethal target onto me, just to ensure Sun Xiu could walk away without a single scratch. The bait worked seamlessly and the abductor's resolve instantly wavered. He violently hurled Sun Xiu away like a piece of garbage, and sprinted directly toward my side of the vehicle with a demonic rage. So you are the real trophy she actually gives a damn about. With a hideous manic grin plastering his face, he violently white-knuckled a fistful of my hair, brutally dragging my body backward toward the absolute edge of the crumbling bridge. Lin Sing Sing's pupils instantaneously dilated in absolute horror, and she fiercely lunged forward into the storm. Yet the absolute first move she made was to securely scoop Sun Xiu into her protective embrace, shrieking, "See you!" Meanwhile, helplessly caught in the abductor's violent ironclad grip I was dragged directly over the railing, plummeting straight down from the towering bridge. The deafening roar of the howling wind aggressively dominated my ears, and the exact millisecond the freezing, turbulent river water fully swallowed my head. My fading consciousness faintly caught Lin Sing Sing's clinical sub-zero voice barking orders from the bridge above. Focus on apprehending the kidnapper first. Do not let that bastard escape under any circumstances. Drag him straight to prison, to permanently neutralize any future threats. We absolutely cannot allow him another opportunity to inflict harm upon Siyu. I desperately wanted to let out a hollow, mocking laugh, but the suffocating river water instantaneously flooded my lungs. causing an excruciating agony that turned my entire vision pitch black. Right before my consciousness fractured completely into the dark void, the devastating reality finally hit me with absolute clarity. In the deepest recesses of Lin Xingxing's black heart, my literal life was valued far less than the capture of a common criminal. The absolute second I forced my heavy eyelids open inside the sterile hospital ward, the chief physician's dead serious, alarming voice drifted directly into my ears. Mr. Shen's internal constitution has been severely systematically depleted over the past few years. A chronic history of heavy binge drinking, combined with absolute deep-rooted emotional exhaustion, on top of the massive internal trauma left behind by his recent secret surgery, this violent plunge from the bridge has completely pulverized his remaining health. Moving forward, he absolutely must undergo rigorous long-term medical rehabilitation. Otherwise, before the doctor could even complete his ominous warning, Lin Xingxing caught sight of my opening eyes, rapidly storming over to the edge of my mattress, her voice vibrating with a highly uncharacteristic frantic wave of anxiety. Lu Yun, thank God you're awake. Tell me, where does it hurt? I stared deep into her frantic eyes, my soul completely washed in an eerie absolute tranquility. If she truly harbored any genuine care for my survival, how could she possibly make the split-second decision to secure the abductor first without a shred of hesitation? Lu Yun, Lin Xingxing murmured, noticing my dead, unyielding silence. She cautiously extended her hand to touch my cheek, only for me to coldly tilt my head sideways, dodging her fingers. Her hand froze midair for a heavy beat, her voice dropping into a low, deep rumble. Everything that transpired on that bridge was entirely my oversight. I will do absolutely everything in my power to compensate you. I merely twitched the corners of my lips into a hollow smirk, refusing to waste a single word. Lin Xingxing, the colossal debt you owe me is entirely too deep, and you will never ever be able to repay it. Perhaps suffocating under the crushing weight of her own guilt, Lin Xingxing actually stayed anchored by my hospital bedside for 2 whole consecutive days. The absolute millisecond I was officially discharged, she immediately dragged me out to a high-end luxury auction, insisting that this was the perfect opportunity to shower me with the compensation she promised. Realizing I couldn't easily shake her off, I simply went along with her pathetic charade. Yet the exact moment we set foot inside the venue, we ran straight into a familiar face, Sun Xiu. But this time around, Lin Xingxing stubbornly refused to grant him a single passing glance, clinging to my side like a shadow and refusing to leave me for a single step. Periodically leaning in to whisper ask if I felt too cold. I knew damn well she was just putting on an elaborate performance. But who was the target audience for this fake devotion? In all likelihood, she was staging this show purely for her own twisted conscience, desperately trying to alleviate the suffocating guilt eating her alive. Right before the bidding officially commenced, Lin Xingxing excused herself to take an urgent phone call, vanishing from my side for a brief moment. As I stood completely isolated by the champagne tower, an attractive woman elegantly glided over to me, flashing a seductive smile as she boldly shot her shot for my contact information. Excuse me, sir, you are breathtakingly handsome. Would I have the absolute pleasure of getting to know you? Before a single syllable could even escape my lips, a dominant arm violently materialized from the shadows behind me, firmly white-knuckling my waist, and aggressively pulling my entire body flush against her chest. He is my official fiancé. Lin Xingxing's voice sliced through the air with sub-zero frigidity, her dark eyes glaring death daggers directly at the intruder. The woman's expression instantaneously morphed into pure panic, clumsily stammering out a frantic apology before scrambling away. Lin Xingxing slowly looked down to lock her gaze onto me, her brows tightly knitted together in severe irritation. Lu Yun, someone was blatantly hitting on you. Why the hell didn't you instantly reject her? I replied, my tone completely flat and detached. Well, it's not like we're officially married yet, are we? She reached up to stroke my jawline, her voice dripping with an absolute undisputed sense of toxic possession. We are walking down that aisle sooner or later. Besides, other than dedicating your life to me, who else could you possibly ever dream of marrying? She locked her hyper-focused gaze dead into the depth of my eyes, delivering each syllable with lethal precision. Get this through your head, I am marrying you in this lifetime no matter what. I stared at her pretty face and a sudden laugh escaped my lips. What an absolute sickening joke. She didn't possess a single shred of genuine love for me, yet she had the absolute audacity to swear that I was her only choice. The absolute second the high-end bidding officially commenced, Lin Xingxing mindlessly aggressively bought out practically every single luxury item I so much as glanced at. She was burning through astronomical amounts of cash without a single millisecond of hesitation. Sun Xiu was seated just a few short rows away, glaring death daggers directly at us with an incredibly dark toxic expression. The moment I excused myself to head to the executive restroom, he stealthily crept in right behind me. He violently backlocked the heavy wooden door behind him, letting out a venomous dramatic sneer. Shen Luyun, you must feel completely on top of the world today, huh? Do you seriously need me to remind you of your pathetic reality? Xing Xing is merely smothering you with performance-ready guilt. It has absolutely nothing to do with love. I bet you're still completely in the dark, aren't you? Back when she was pregnant, that baby was already 3 months along. But the second I squeezed out a few tears and whined that I couldn't bear to watch her carry another man's biological child, she didn't hesitate for a fraction of a second before swallowing those abortion pills. And let's not forget my severe kidney failure. She literally butchered your body and carved out your kidney just to hand it to me. Even during that dramatic standoff on the bridge, she explicitly claimed she loathed my guts. But that was a calculated psychological tactic specifically designed to paint a massive target on your back, no matter the time or place. The absolute second I snap my fingers, she will ruthlessly sacrifice absolutely everything to satisfy my every whim. Sun Xiu aggressively closed the distance between us, his voice dropping into a sickeningly sweet, toxic whisper. Shen Luyun yelled, "You have completely, utterly lost this game." He stood there practically vibrating, expecting me to suffer a complete emotional meltdown, but I merely locked my dead, unbothered eyes onto his smug face. "Are you officially finished running your mouth?" Sun Xiu instantaneously froze in absolute stunned confusion. I calmly reached for a paper towel, thoroughly drying my hands, before shifting my gaze upward to stare directly into his pathetic face. "I don't give a single solitary damn. After all, I am leaving this country forever in a few short days." Sun Xiu's expression instantaneously morphed into pure, unadulterated disbelief. "How the hell can you not give a damn?" Shen Luyun knew, before he could even finish spewing his venom. He abruptly hoisted his own hand and violently whipped his palm across his own face, the sharp, brutal crack of the slap echoing aggressively throughout the entire restroom. Before my brain could even process what the hell was happening, the absolute next split second, Lin Xing Xing slammed the door open and violently barged inside, brutally shoving me backward with a manic force. Shen Luyun, idiotid. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I stumbled backward, completely out of balance, my lower back crashing brutally against the sharp, jagged corner of the marble vanity, the excruciating flash of agony turning my entire vision pitch black. Warm blood broke containment, slowly trickling down the side of my forehead. Yet Lin Xing Xing didn't grant me a single millisecond of concern. She bolted straight over to shield Sun Xiu, her voice slicing through the air like a sub-zero blade. "Did I not just bankrupt myself at the auction to compensate your ungrateful ass? Why the hell are you still violently targeting and bullying Xiu?" Sun Xiu pathetically cradled his swollen cheek, theatrical tears cascading down his face like a waterfall. Xing Xing, please don't be angry with Luyun. It's all my fault, Lin Xing Xing's face turned completely apocalyptic and dark, scooping Sun Xiu up into her protective embrace as she spun around to leave. As Sun Xiu nestled snugly into her chest, he slowly turned his head back over her shoulder to look at me, flashing a smug, highly victorious smirk. I was left completely abandoned and isolated, propped up against the cold tiled wall. As a hollow, hysterical laugh escaped my lips until actual bitter tears flooded my eyes. Shen Luyun, just open your eyes and look at the absolute ruins of your 10-year devotion. What exactly did you gain from this living hell? Unsurprisingly, Lin Xing Xing never bothered to return home that night, and I didn't waste a single millisecond trying to call her phone. My living heart had officially fractured into a graveyard of absolute dead silence. I would never again spiral into a panic worrying about her well-being, nor track her location or care what corporate games she was playing. With my final departure just around the corner, I gathered my tightest circle of day one brothers at a luxury hotel to host my own private farewell dinner. As the liquor flowed and my brothers got heavily wasted, their eyes flushed a painful crimson as they fiercely cursed Lin Xing Xing out for being an absolute piece of trash. "You literally bled yourself dry, sacrificing your entire existence for that woman. What right does she have to treat you like a worthless nobody? You literally ripped your own body apart to build her empire, and she has the absolute audacity to treat you like literal garbage. Back during our university years, Jixin was already hopelessly infatuated with you, and settling down with her will be a million times better than wasting your life on Lin Xing Xing." I merely forced a weak smile down in glass after glass of hard liquor. Once the emotional gathering finally dissolved, I settled the massive restaurant bill and wandered completely alone down the quiet corridor to sober up, just as I prepared to permanently exit the venue. The explosive sound of a heated argument between Lin Xing Xing and Jiang Qingfei echoed from the far end of the hallway. Because of one pathetic whine from that leech, you brutally aborted your own biological child with Shen Luyun. To save his worthless life, you literally butchered Shen Luyun's body to carve out his kidney. And now you are actually ready to submit just because Sun Xiu muttered that he suddenly wants a baby to. You're seriously going to destroy everything just to breed with him. Lin Sing Sing's voice cut through the air with a terrifying psychopathic calmness. If I refuse to give him a child of his own, he will simply go out and find some other woman to do it. And that is an absolute reality I will never tolerate. Then what about Shen Luyun? Zhang Qingfei was practically screaming at the top of her lungs, unforgettable. How can you possibly face him after committing such vile treachery? Lin Sing Sing fell into a brief suffocating silence, before tossing out a chilling indifferent remark. Have I not already fully prepared to walk down the aisle and marry him? Are you seriously telling me that isn't more than enough compensation? I stood frozen in the exact shadows of the corridor, my fingernails digging violently into my palms until they nearly drew blood. As the explosive confrontation finally neared its bitter conclusion, Zhang Qingfei stormed away in an absolute white-hot rage, and Lin Sing Sing calmly spun around to make her exit. Driven by a sudden ghostly impulse, I silently tracked her footsteps, watching her glide into a secluded luxury hotel suite. The heavy door hadn't been fully latched shut, and peering through the narrow crack, I caught the raw sight of Sun Xiu aggressively pinning Lin Sing Sing down onto the mattress, systematically unbuckling his designer leather belt, while burying his face into her neck to forcefully kiss her, his voice dropping into a raspy primal growl. Sing Sing babe, let's make a baby right now. Lin Sing Sing let out a coquettish chuckle, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. Only if you swear an ironclad promise to me that you will never creep into another woman's bed besides mine. I stood outside the threshold silently, witnessing the entire sickening performance from start to finish, before raising my smartphone to capture every single second of the explicit betrayal on video. This time around, not a single tear escaped my eyes. Because once your soul is completely dead, the capacity for pain ceases to exist. On the absolute final night before my departure, as the dense midnight darkness completely consumed the city, I was completely swamped with packing the final remnants of my life into a suitcase. The exact millisecond I folded the absolute final piece of clothing into my suitcase, the electronic front door lock clicked aggressively open. Lin Sing Sing pushed her way inside the apartment, her designer trench coat casually draped over her forearm, as she exhaled a faint bitter aroma of expensive alcohol. She stood frozen at the threshold for a brief heartbeat, her gaze locking dead onto the wide-open suitcase resting on the floor, before casually tossing out a careless question, "Why the hell are you packing up your things?" I opened my mouth, fully prepared to look her in the eye and say, "I am leaving you forever." But she cold-bloodedly cut me off before I could even utter a single syllable, her tone shifting into a rare calculated gentleness. "Luyun, teach me how to properly brew traditional herbal soup." I froze completely in sheer disbelief, staring blankly as she gracefully bypassed me and strode straight into the kitchen. Throughout our entire decade together, I was always the pathetic servant catering to her every whim. While she had never so much as touched a kitchen utensil, I maintained a heavy dead silence for a few seconds, but ultimately found my feet moving following her into the room anyway. Inside the kitchen, she stood rigidly before the slick marble countertop, her designer sleeves rolled up all the way to her elbows, exposing the sharp, defined contours of her forearms. She was clumsily hacking away at fresh ginger slices, her absolute lack of knife skills blatantly obvious and awkward. I stood off to the side, instructing her in a completely detached ghostly voice, "Keep the flame low. Hold off on the seasonings. Pour the fresh water in at the absolute end. Once it reaches a rolling boil, bring it down to a gentle simmer." She exhibited a highly uncharacteristic miraculous wave of patience, systematically executing my every instruction until the broth was perfectly brewed. She dipped a spoon into the pot and took a tentative sip, her tense brows instantly relaxing. Wow, this actually turned out pretty incredible. Yet she didn't show a single microsecond of intention to share a single drop with me. She aggressively checked the face of her luxury watch, before abruptly tossing out a dismissive remark. "Luyun, I have some critical matters to handle over the next few days. I'll make it up to you later." She snatched a high-end thermal flask from the counter, poured every last drop of the freshly brewed soup inside, and spun on her heel to vanish from the apartment. I stood frozen in the exact same spot in absolute silence, listening to the heavy click of the front door sealing shut behind her. I calmly retrieved my smartphone and tapped straight into Sun Xiu's social media feed. Unsurprisingly, he had just blasted out a brand new attention-seeking status update. I suddenly have a massive, unbearable craving for authentic herbal soup. I wonder if there is anyone out there willing to learn the recipe just for me. I cut the power to the glowing screen and let out a soft, pitying chuckle. This exact recipe was something I had meticulously mastered years ago solely for her benefit, back when her severe stomach ulcers used to leave her completely crippled in pain. The absolute millisecond I caught wind that herbal soup was a miraculous cure for chronic stomach lining recovery, I spent weeks running errands and begging world-class chefs at heritage restaurants, pleading with them to drill me through countless failed batches until I finally perfected the execution. Yet here we are today, and this elite woman who proudly refused to ever touch a dirty kitchen counter is voluntarily washing ingredients and brewing gourmet broth just to pamper Sun Tzu. I suppose the brutal cycle of unrequited love and absolute obsession operates in a twisted wheel of karma. On the absolute morning of my final departure, I silently packed the remaining shreds of my life into a single piece of luggage. With several hours left on the countdown before my international flight, I pulled a dark baseball cap low over my face and stepped out into the streets to visit a few nostalgic landmarks one last time. Exactly 6 hours before permanent departure, I revisited the campus grounds of Zhenhua High School, the very institution where Lin Xingxing and I grew up together. The old classroom stood completely desolate and echoing, and I easily navigated the rows to locate the exact wooden desk I used to occupy as a teenager. My fingers slowly traced the jagged, awkwardly carved text etched deep into the varnished wood. Shen Luyun is completely hopelessly in love with Lin Xingxing. I pulled out a sharp metal key and began aggressively gouging out every single letter of that line, scraping the wood continuously until the declaration was thoroughly obliterated into illegible scars. Fine wooden shavings cascaded down onto the floor like winter snow. A pathetic funeral for the shattered remnants of my wasted youth. Exactly 5 hours before permanent departure, I took a final stroll down the city's famous Lover's Bridge. The heavily rusted custom love padlock we purchased a decade ago was still securely clamped onto the iron railing, our two full names deeply engraved into its tarnished metallic face. Back then, I had eagerly dragged her to this spot with burning red cheeks, naively rambling about the urban legend that locking our souls here guaranteed we would stay together for eternity. She had merely offered a flat, completely detached grunt in response, passively allowing me to orchestrate the entire romantic scenario. Looking back at it from the ruins of the present, she probably regarded the entire event as nothing more than a pathetic childish joke. I gave the metal padlock a sudden violent yank, the fragile rusted chain snapping completely in two, before plunging straight down into the murky river currents below, swallowed so cleanly by the black water that it didn't even leave a noticeable splash. Exactly 4 hours before permanent departure, I directed my footsteps toward the ancient Pujang temple. My sole objective was to reclaim the custom crimson silk ribbon I had personally tied to the sacred branches, only to catch sight of Lin Xingxing and Sun Tzu standing directly beneath the massive wishing tree in the distance. The head monk bowed politely, asking Sun Tzu, "What blessing does the young devotee wish to manifest today?" Sun Tzu immediately put on his classic starry-eyed expression and cooed, "I pray that our biological baby arrives into our lives as quickly as humanly possible." Lin Xingxing's cheeks instantaneously flushed a deep crimson blush, her voice dropping into an incredibly soft honeyed murmur. I simply pray that every single desire of the beautiful soul standing right beside me manifests into absolute reality. The monk gracefully extended 2 fresh crimson silk ribbons toward them. May the heavens grant that both of your beautiful manifestations solidify into truth. The toxic duo eagerly grasped the smooth silk ribbons and advanced toward the ancient branches, only to quickly realize that the massive wishing tree was already heavily overloaded with prayers, leaving absolutely zero vacant space for them to hang their new ribbon. Lin Xingxing instantly knitted her brows in pure annoyance, turning her arrogant gaze toward the nearby junior monk to demand, "I will immediately wire a donation of $5 million in merit money to this temple. Now strip every single one of these old trashy ribbons off the branches." The terrified junior monk frantically rushed forward, systematically tearing down the ancient crimson ribbons one by one, before nervously inquiring how they should manage the discarded heap. Lin Xingxing didn't even waste a single passing glance on them, barking, hurled them straight into the garbage. Standing concealed around the corridor bend, I silently waited for them to leave before stepping forward, kneeling in the dirt to scavenge through that massive discarded pile of abandoned crimson silk. Every single shred of it was completely covered in the desperate prayers I had carefully handwritten over the decade. I pray that Lin Xingxing's paralyzed legs miraculously recover. I pray that I can walk down the aisle with Lin Xingxing and grow old together. A soft, hollow chuckle escaped my lips, as a bitter, burning sting flooded my swollen eyes. Honestly, this is for the best. It saved me the tragic trouble of having to rip them down and discard them myself. With the absolute final hour left on the countdown, I gripped the handle of my solitary suitcase and sprinted toward the international terminal. The precise millisecond I took my seat in the cabin, the flight attendant gracefully delivered the standard reminder to switch all electronic devices to airplane mode. I smoothly tapped into my encrypted photo gallery, locating the explicit video file I had secretly recorded that horrific night. I selected the scandalous footage of Lin Xingxing and Sun Tzu aggressively tangled up in bed together, attaching it to a message. Following that, I systematically typed out my final words, syllable by brutal syllable. Lin Xingxing, Xingkong. The sickening reality that you butchered my body and carved out my kidney just to hand it to Sun Tzu. I know absolutely everything. The fact that the exact microsecond Sun Tzu threw a theatrical crying tantrum, You cold-bloodedly swallowed abortion pills to murder our 3-month-old biological child. I know about that too. And your grand plan to breed with Sun Siyu to give him a brand new biological baby of your own. I'm fully aware of that as well. Lin Sing Sing, congratulations, you have officially manifested your ultimate desire. I am officially discarding you from my life. I am permanently returning your toxic soul back to Sun Siyu where you belong. I clicked send, systematically blocked her number, deleted her contact, and aggressively killed the power to my phone. The absolute second the massive aircraft violently roared down the runway and rocketed into the heavens. I locked my eyes onto the endless expanse of rolling white clouds cascading outside my window, and gently let my heavy eyelids drift shut. This time around, I will absolutely never look back at the ruins. The international flight cruised across the sky before smoothly touching down on a foreign runway. And as I gripped my heavy luggage and walked through the crowded arrival terminal, my entire existence still felt as though I were wandering through a surreal, disjointed dream. Right then, a stunningly fair soft hand elegantly wrapped around my fingers, effortlessly relieving me of the heavy weight of my suitcase. You look completely spaced out, Luyun. Don't tell me you're still wasting a single brain cell fantasizing about that toxic Lin Xing Xing. He Jixin stood before me, a mesmerizing, seductive smirk playing across her face, carrying a subtle hint of lethal possessiveness. As if the absolute millisecond I uttered the wrong name, she would instantaneously execute a plan to abduct me from the radar, severing every single possibility of my return to permanently lock me by her side. I felt a sudden wave of genuine surprise, but I merely offered a slow, reassuring shake of my head. Oh, not a chance. I have completely permanently scrubbed her from my soul. I swore an ironclad promise to you that I would never waste another single drop of affection on Lin Xingxing, let alone maintain any toxic entanglements with her ever again. The absolute second those words left my lips, a radiant, breathtaking smile instantaneously illuminated He Jixin's face. You better mean exactly what you just said. She delivered the line with a playfully arrogant toss of her head, yet her fingers stealthily slid down to firmly lock themselves with mine, guiding me and my luggage toward a massive luxury fleet she had orchestrated in advance. An elite line of identical jet-black Maybachs stood in flawless formation, every single trunk wide open to the heavens, brimming with a spectacular explosion of crimson roses and custom balloons. Under the captivated gaze of hundreds of passing travelers, He Jixin smoothly materialized an exquisite, blindingly brilliant diamond ring, out of absolute thin air, presenting it dead before my eyes. I am fully aware that staging this proposal right at arrivals is incredibly fast, but I am completely done letting time slip through my fingers. I want to sign those marriage papers with you this exact second. I refuse to let you slip away from my life ever again. I love you, Shen Luyun. Let's officially get married right now. Even though dedicating my future to He Jixin was a calculated choice I had long finalized, the sheer magnitude of this spectacular, heartfelt surprise still completely shattered my defenses, sending an overwhelming wave of raw emotion crashing through my chest. Throughout all those brutal years when I was blindly sacrificing my soul for someone else, He Jixin had been silently, relentlessly harboring this fierce devotion for me, consistently shielding it from my view out of fear. I frantically wiped away the rogue tears cascading down my cheeks, and amidst the roaring, ecstatic cheers of the gathering crowd, I extended my hand and nodded enthusiastically. I absolutely do. He Jixin's fingers white-knuckled the diamond band, trembling with pure emotion. And though her movements were agonizingly slow and deliberate, she successfully slid the ring home onto my finger. Before my brain could even fully process the reality of the moment it kissed, she aggressively pulled me by the hand straight into the back of the lead vehicle. Do you have your official ID on your person right now? We are driving straight to the government office to lock this registration down this exact second, just to ensure no unexpected variables can ever mess with our timeline. As she spoke, she systematically unpacked her own prearranged legal documents, laying them out before me. She had clearly been desperately counting down the days for this exact moment to arrive. Oh, I was instantaneously heavily infected by her chaotic, passionate energy, my heart violently hammering against my ribs at a breakneck pace. I have absolutely every single document on me. Let's head straight to the registry office. Before the words could even fully echo through the car, she aggressively slammed her foot down onto the accelerator, propelling everything forward at an absolutely mind-blowing speed. Smile for the camera, you two, with a sharp, sudden click. Our official wedding portrait materialized before our eyes. In the absolute very next millisecond, our brand new marriage certificates were officially hot off the press, clutching those 2 crimson booklets that still literally radiated the scent of fresh ink. Both He Jixin and I stood there completely paralyzed in sheer disbelief. We were officially legally husband and wife. A milestone I once regarded as an absolute statistical impossibility had miraculously solidified into absolute truth. He Jixin was so profoundly overwhelmed with pure ecstasy, she practically lost her voice. violently wrapping her arms around me in a suffocating embrace, as if desperately trying to fuse my entire physical frame straight into her bones. It was as though this violent physical contact was her only way to verify I wasn't just a ghostly hallucination by her side. Audie. I passively melted into her tight embrace, overwhelmed by a liberating wave of pure, unadulterated peace. From this exact milestone moving forward into eternity, Lin Sing Sing and I are officially dead to one another. However, I remained completely blissfully oblivious to the chaotic reality that the viral footage of Hee Jiksen spending an absolute fortune at the arrival gate to stage that grand proposal to me was already aggressively blowing up across the entire internet and had already ruthlessly infiltrated Sun Siu's feed. Inside their luxury hotel suite, the exact moment Lin Sing Sing stepped out of the steam-filled bathroom, she caught sight of Sun Siu nervously white-knuckling his smartphone, biting his lip, and casting a highly calculated dramatic look of distress toward her. If you've got something to say, just spit it out already. Lin Sing Sing mindlessly towel-dried her damp hair, her loosely tied designer bathrobe, failing to conceal the prominent dark love bites branding her neck. Sun Siu heavily compressed his lips together, putting on a theatrical show of absolute reluctance as he slid the glowing screen dead before her face. The man featured in this trending video looks identical to Luyun. Is it possible my eyes are playing massive tricks on me? Didn't you two already orchestrate a high-profile proposal? Aren't you literally on the verge of walking down the aisle with him? How the hell could he possibly accept another woman's public proposal and explicitly vow to commit his entire life to someone else? Could it be he's actually been running around behind your back engaging in a disgusting affair? The absolute second he planted that venomous seed, he deliberately cut himself off, letting the implication hang heavily in the air, his eyes practically radiating unadulterated toxic malice. Yet he quickly spun around to fake a charitable defense. Then again, Luyun is so pathologically obsessed with you. There is simply no way the man in this viral footage is actually him, right? Maybe it's just some long-lost identical twin brother he never told us about. But honestly, looking at the footage, those two actually look incredibly phenomenal together. The comment section is literally blowing up with people saying how perfectly matched they are, and wishing them infinite happiness. Sun Siu's malicious attempts to explain were blatantly designed to pour pure gasoline onto the fire. Lin Sing Sing's expression instantaneously plummeted into absolute dark hostility, a volatile rage igniting deep within her pitch-black eyes. That is absolutely without a doubt Shen Luyun and Hee Jiksen. How the hell could he dare to accept Hee Jiksen's public proposal? Has he completely lost his goddamn mind? An uncontrollable fury violently surged straight to her head, and the exact millisecond she tried to dial my number to scream at me, she discovered she had been completely systematically blacklisted. Every single one of her communication channels had been ruthlessly blocked and deleted. Suddenly, the massive wall of text and the video file I had sent her via WeChat, just a few short hours prior, violently forced its way into her field of vision. Almost instantaneously, the roaring fire in her heart was brutally extinguished by a bucket of sub-zero ice water, leaving her entire body completely paralyzed and freezing. He actually knows everything. Lin Sing Sing's fingers trembled with pure panic as she tapped open the video file, and the screen immediately displayed the raw, explicit footage of her passionate night entangled with Sun Siu. The camera angle was slightly shaky and unstable, blatantly radiating the catastrophic emotional devastation of the person holding the phone. Her entire brain instantaneously short-circuited into a complete hollow blank. She scrolled back up, reading and rereading the brutal text message I left behind millions of times, utterly paralyzed in sheer disbelief that her reality was collapsing like this. Isn't this man pathologically, hopelessly infatuated with me? Didn't he love me enough to happily destroy his own body and sacrifice everything for my happiness? How the hell could he just instantaneously pull the plug on his love for me? Why did he suddenly decide to completely discard me like garbage? How on earth did he uncover the dark truth about the kidney extraction, the forced abortion, and my secret agreement to breed a biological child with Sun Siu? Lin Sing Sing's complexion turned a ghostly skeletal shade of white, her vocal cords completely freezing up, until she couldn't even summon the strength to utter a single syllable. To have a man who worshipped the very ground she walked on suddenly declare his absolute indifference. There was simply no way her massive ego could ever comprehend or accept this reality. But given the vile subhuman atrocities she had systematically committed, the absolute second the truth came to light, it was a statistical impossibility for me to ever stay. If I had remained completely blind and oblivious to her treachery, I would have undoubtedly continued to guard her side like a loyal dog. Someone must have maliciously leaked the information to him. Almost instantaneously, a specific name aggressively materialized in her mind. Jiang Qingfei. She frantically speed-dialed the number, barking a venomous, unhinged interrogation the absolute second the call connected. Was it you? Did you maliciously open your mouth and confess absolutely everything I did to Shen Luyun? Yeshu. Otherwise, how the hell could he possibly be at the airport right now, accepting another woman's proposal? Zhang Qingfei had literally just stepped away from a grueling hours-long surgery and was completely in the dark regarding the explosive drama unfolding online. Her brain was entirely fried, leaving her completely clueless as to what Lin Xingxing was screaming about. Yet she instinctively fired back at Lin Xingxing's baseless accusation. What absolute rubbish are you spewing out of your mouth? I haven't uttered a single solitary word to Shen Luyun, and him accepting someone else's wedding proposal? Quit playing these ridiculous unhinged games with me. But even with her explicit vehement denial, Lin Xingxing's toxic paranoia completely refused to believe it. Cut the crap, Zhang Qingfei. Aside from you constantly playing his defense attorney and white knighting for him, nobody else possesses that information. It all makes perfect crystal clear sense to me now. This entire pathetic stunt today, the sudden breakup and the airport proposal, is nothing but a trashy coordinated conspiracy orchestrated by the two of you, isn't it? You're both just desperately dying to watch me crawl back in absolute regret, right? I already explicitly told him that my lingering feelings for Siu mean absolutely nothing. I already swallowed my pride and agreed to spend the rest of my life with him. The grand proposal has already been successfully executed, and we are literally one signature away from a legal marriage certificate. What else could his greedy, ungrateful soul possibly be unsatisfied with? Oh, I get it now. Is he just throwing a massive hysterical tantrum because he's desperate to secure the bag and lock me down? The second he ghosted me and blacklisted every single one of my communication channels, he wanted you to deliver his ultimatum, fine, pass this message along to him. I am officially willing to submit. I will drive down to the registry office and sign the marriage papers with him this exact second. With that on the table, he should finally stop running his petty psychological scams, right? Side note, Lin Xingxing aggressively massaged her temples, her temper violently flaring as she barely contained her rage. Zhang Qingfei, on the other hand, let out a sharp chuckle, completely dumbfounded by the sheer delusion. Lin Xingxing, Fei. Whatever moves Shen Luyun is making have absolutely zero to do with me. In the past, the only reason I constantly spoke up to drag you for your actions was because I couldn't stand watching you treat a human being like absolute garbage. But thank God the man has finally broken free from your toxic spell and woken up. You see it? He has officially dumped your ungrateful ass for good. I have absolutely zero intention of mediating your crumbling toxic relationship. So lose my number and never bring your pathetic drama to my doorstep again. You are finally getting the exact miserable karma you richly deserve. The absolute second the final syllable left her mouth, the line violently went dead as she slammed the phone down. Lin Xingxing stared blankly at the dark screen of her smartphone, her face morphing into a highly complex, chaotic storm of anxiety. Sun Xiu immediately clocked the absolute panic taking over her demeanor, his expression twisting into a brief flash of sheer ugly resentment. Yet he desperately forced a delicate, comforting smile back onto his face. Xingxing babe, you said it best yourself. Shen Luyun's entire world revolves solely around worshipping you. This little stunt is definitely just a temporary emotional cry for attention. Just freeze him out for a couple of days and he'll come crawling straight back to your feet. There is absolutely no need to stress over it. He literally spent the last 10 brutal years refusing to walk away from you, didn't he? How could he possibly abandon everything over such a microscopic, trivial issue? Besides, your desperate demands for him to surrender his kidney and terminate that pregnancy were completely driven by unavoidable, painful circumstances. Just lay out a thorough explanation for him, T, and he will undoubtedly show complete empathy and understand. Give it a few days and his brain will inevitably sort itself out before he comes crawling right back to your side. After all, a deep consuming infatuation that burned for an entire decade isn't something a person can just shut off like a light switch. He mindlessly spewed out these casual words of comfort to her. Whether this sudden explosive breakup was absolute reality or an elaborate bluff made zero difference to his self-absorbed world. He was merely deploying these comforting lies to soothe Lin Xingxing's fractured ego, considering he still desperately needed her to secure a perfectly healthy high-status heir. Lin Xingxing kept her eyes heavily cast downward, maintaining a dead ominous silence, appearing as though she were genuinely absorbing his tactical reassurance, yet simultaneously looking completely detached, her mind drifting elsewhere. It wasn't until Sun Xiu repeatedly cooed her name, desperate for attention, and aggressively wrapped his arms around her neck to force a deep kiss upon her lips, that her consciousness slowly, painfully snapped back into reality. Xiu is absolutely 100% correct. Luyun's love for me is an absolute immutable law of nature. No matter what apocalyptic disaster strikes, he is pathologically incapable of walking away. Throwing a petty emotional tantrum is just standard behavior for him. Besides, I've always known exactly how to manipulate him back into submission, and once I clarify my complex struggles, he will undoubtedly fold and completely forgive me. Lin Sing desperately attempted to smother the growing dark dread in her gut, passively matching the intensity of his kiss, as the two of them once again violently tangled their bodies together in a desperate embrace. Over the course of the next 3 agonizing days, Lin Sing escorted Sun Xiu across a myriad of high-end luxury tourist hotspots, viciously losing themselves in reckless, passionate trysts at every single destination. Yet despite a full 72 hours evaporating into absolute nothingness, the glowing screen of her smartphone failed to register a single notification from my end. Forget about receiving a desperate text or a tearful apology. I hadn't even granted her the mercy of lifting her number out of my digital blacklist. The creeping venom of pure anxiety in Lin Xing's chest grew too massive to ignore, even while striding shoulder to shoulder beside a smiling Sun Xiu. She was clearly entirely checked out, her mind completely consumed by dark paranoia. After a grueling silence, she abruptly turned a profoundly apologetic gaze towards Sun Xiu. Xiu, I'm deeply sorry, but I can no longer extend this vacation to stay by your side. Corporate emergencies have officially hit critical mass during my absence, and I absolutely must fly back to the headquarters immediately to handle the fallout. No worries, Xingxing, go handle your empire, but promise you won't work yourself to exhaustion. Make sure you take proper care of your body. Sun Xiu delivered the hollow line with a completely detached, superficial wave of indifference. A subtle red flag that Lin Xingxing failed to even remotely pick up on. Or rather, she had long since been conditioned to accept this exact flavor of treatment from him. The Golden Boy had historically always operated under this precise, self-serving dynamic, only turning on the performative charm and affection when he desperately needed her status to bail him out. The second he got what he wanted, he'd coldly toss her aside like a broken toy. In the past, she had bitterly loathed him for treating her like a convenient option. Yet she was too deeply obsessed to ever cut the toxic cord. She was completely powerless against her own attachment, forced to just swallow her pride and accept his dynamic. The moment Lin Xingxing safely dropped Sun Xiu off at his apartment, she immediately raced back to her own sprawling luxury villa. But the exact millisecond she crossed the threshold, an uneasy frown instinctively carved its way onto her face. The massive estate suddenly felt hollow, as if stripped of its core. Yet superficially everything looked completely untouched. Butler, where the hell is Shen Luyun? Has his ungrateful ass still not crawled back home? Just how long does he intend to keep playing these pathetic psychological games? Lin Sangxing tightly knitted her brows in growing irritation, her voice dripping with an icy menacing chill. The butler and the rest of the household staff exchanged terrified glances, letting out a heavy synchronized sigh of pure dread, before finally summoning the courage to speak up. Miss Lin, regarding Mr. Shen, he completely packed up his entire life and walked out 3 whole days ago. He didn't leave behind a single trace of his existence under this roof, since you never bothered to ask about him during this entire time. We all naturally assumed you were fully aware of his permanent departure. Furthermore, it appears Mr. Shen has officially legally married He Jixin. The entire internet is currently exploding into a chaotic frenzy over the news. Is this an absolute final breakup, or is he just throwing a massive tantrum? Should we immediately instruct our PR legal team to step in and completely scrub these viral headlines from the media? As he spoke, he nervously extended his tablet, flashing the high-definition wedding photos right before Lin Xingxing's face. The brutal reality of those words struck her like a violent lightning bolt on the diet, sending a deafening high-pitched ringing echoing through her skull. Her surroundings instantly blurred into a dead, hollow silence. It took a grueling eternity for her to desperately force air back into her frozen lungs. Butler, are you telling me Shen Luyun is genuinely gone for good? He actually signed marriage papers with someone else. Has he truly decided to discard me from his life completely? No. This has to be a sick, elaborate joke he's playing on me, right? How the hell could he dare to legally bind his life to He Jixin? He is fully aware that He Jixin is my absolute #1 mortal enemy. Why is he going to such psychotic lengths just to spite me? She stood there, completely paralyzed in sheer unadulterated disbelief, staring at the crystal clear photo of our official marriage certificate, magnifying and dissecting the image millions of times over. Yet her massive narcissistic ego still completely failed to process the truth. He was the one who committed an unforgivable sin against me. He was the one who owed me an eternal apology. He knew damn well how heavily he had wronged my family, which is exactly why he vowed to spend the absolute rest of his miserable life making it up to me, which is exactly why she locked in the decision to deploy the rest of her life just to patch things up with me. So why on earth would he suddenly go and legally tie the knot with He Jixin? Consumed by an uncontrollable blinding rage, Lin Xingxing violently hurled the butler's phone across the room. The device slammed brutally against the concrete wall, instantly shattering into a million fragmented pieces. Yet her eyes remained bloodshot with pure fury. as she completely lost any shred of her goddamn sanity. I had been utterly, mercilessly resolute about burning this bridge down. Inside the sprawling villa, you literally couldn't unearth a single solitary microscopic trace that I had ever existed there. Lin Xingxing's chest violently heaved up and down, her suffocating anger making it practically impossible to even draw oxygen. He Jixin has spent her entire miserable life plotting my literal downfall. She's nothing but a toxic calculated viper and everyone knows it. Does that absolute idiot even possess a single clue about who He Jixin truly is? To just recklessly jump into a legal marriage with a demon like that? Is he not even remotely terrified of being utterly manipulated, abused, and systematically bled dry until he literally has nothing left? The deeper Lin Xingxing spiraled into her own toxic thoughts, the more intense her dark paranoia grew. After a grueling, agonizing silence, she finally forced herself to speed dial a heavily restricted number she hadn't touched in ages. He Jixin, it's me, Lin Xingxing. Listen to me very carefully. Shen Luyun is my exclusive property. He only accepted your pathetic proposal because he's throwing a temporary tantrum to spite me. You better think twice before you dare lay a single abusive finger on him, or try to push him around like your personal puppet. He is absolutely not a pawn for you to deploy in your pathetic vendetta against me. I am highly advising you to pack him up and ship him back to my doorstep immediately, or I swear to God I will personally make it my life's mission to utterly destroy you. Lin Xingxing's gaze narrowed into an icy lethal glare, her manicured fingers aggressively hammering a restless, impatient rhythm against the mahogany desk. On the other end of the line, He Jixin merely let out a sharp, venomous, mocking scoff. Oh, please, Lin Xingxing. As we speak, Shen Luyun is officially, legally, my fully certified husband. Every single intimate dynamic between us, both appropriate and highly scandalous, has already been thoroughly executed. And you're seriously demanding I just hand him right back over to your toxic custody. You are living in an absolute delusional dream world. She deliberately, viciously enunciated. The phrase, fully certified husband, her smooth voice dripping with a smug, profoundly satisfied afterglow. Lin Xingxing was obviously no innocent virgin to the game. There was a 0% chance she could ever miss the explicit meaning laced behind that tone. Her hands instinctively white-knuckled into a lethal fist. And if they weren't separated by miles of digital cellular signals, that fist would have already brutally collided straight into He Jixin's smug face. Before Lin Xingxing could even formulate a single coherent threat, He Jixin's voice dropped to a freezing absolute sub-zero temperature. Face the facts, Lin Xingxing. Shen Luyun has officially dumped your ungrateful ass. He possesses absolutely zero love left for you in his entire body. Besides, you've always been pathologically obsessed with warming Sun Xiu's bed anyway. Luyun has absolutely zero need for your pathetic charity case crumbs of affection. You are fundamentally unworthy of the pure devotion he wasted on you. The priceless treasure you so casually discarded like garage. I will passionately cherish. I will worship him as my ultimate crown jewel. Isn't occupying Sun Xiu's bed already more than enough to satisfy you? Luyun has already completely cut the cord and moved on. So what absolute pathetic purpose does your desperate stalking serve now? The millisecond those savage, unyielding facts were fired raw at her, Lin Xingxing dropped into a dead, suffocating silence. I had always treated her like absolute royalty, worshipping her with a fierce, unconditional devotion. She was acutely, flawlessly aware of that reality deep down. Now that I had legally bound my life to another woman, permanently erasing myself from her orbit to never hassle her again, and officially freeing her from ever paying penance for her sins, what internal toxic void within her was still left entirely unsatisfied, unnecessary. She didn't possess the emotional capacity to comprehend it. All her fractured mind knew was that she could never under any circumstance let me slip away, or she would be completely consumed by a lifetime of soul-crushing regret. That was the desperate narrative spinning inside Lin Xingxing's head, and she aggressively spat those exact words out into the receiver. But He Jixin had absolutely zero tolerance for her toxic looping drama. Shen Luyun has officially closed the book on your pathetic chapter. If you dare try to manipulate or harass him ever again, I swear to God I will personally unleash absolute hell upon you. I highly advise you to completely erase your existence from our married life. We are currently living in absolute blissful paradise right now, and there is zero room for a toxic ex to come sneaking her foot through the door. As she delivered the final warning, He Jixin moved her finger to brutally cut the call. In that microsecond, Lin Xingxing caught a crystal clear audio snippet of my voice echoing from the background. Hey Jixin, didn't you promise you were going to whip up a gourmet dinner exclusively for me tonight? I'm absolutely starving here. Lin Xingxing instantaneously drifted into the hollow, paralyzed trance. Once upon a time, I used to exclusively show my raw, vulnerable side only to her. But later, in order to aggressively secure high-stakes corporate mergers for her empire, I forced myself to evolve into a fiercely stoic, calculating professional, gradually stripping away that raw emotional dependency I once placed on her. She couldn't even unearth a single memory of the last time I had leaned on her with that level of unfiltered vulnerability. If I could somehow peek into the chaotic wreckage of her thoughts right this second, I would look her dead in the eyes and tell her straight. The death of my dependence on you had nothing to do with personal growth. It was simply because you ruthlessly shattered my faith in you millions of times over. It became physically impossible to place my trust in your hands. Knowing you would instantaneously abandon me in a ditch the exact millisecond Sun Tzu snapped his fingers. That is precisely why I locked my vulnerability away from you forever. But Lin Xingxing remained completely oblivious to the depth of the psychological damage she caused. She only felt an agonizing sensation as if a million rusted needles were violently piercing her heart, sending a dense, suffocating wave of pure, unadulterated pain ripping through her entire chest. Why the hell does hearing him depend so wholly on He Jixin? Make my entire chest contract with such unbearable, suffocating agony. I no longer demanded that she take legal or moral responsibility for her past actions. She should logically be absolutely ecstatic over her newfound freedom. Down the line, once she successfully birthed Sun Tzu's biological child, and their perfect little family unit is officially locked in together. Perhaps Sue will finally throw her a bone and agree to a legal marriage. They would live out their days in absolute blissful paradise. And within that manufactured paradise, there would be absolutely zero trace of me. This exact picture-perfect scenario was precisely what the old Lin Xingxing had desperately fantasized about for years. Yet right now, her toxic soul was being utterly consumed by an inexplicable, deeply unsettling misery. Lin Xingxing desperately tried to force her racing mind into absolute numbness. I was comfortably resting in my own bed, completely unbothered, while she spent the entire brutal night tossing and turning without a single second of sleep. The massive villa had dropped into a dead, terrifyingly ominous silence. Over the past few days of constantly catering to Sun Tzu's every whim, her basic dietary schedule had completely catastrophically deteriorated. In the dead of night, a violent wave of gastric acid began aggressively churning in her stomach, the sudden agonizing spasms forcing her entire body to curl tightly into a pathetic ball. Her complexion instantly drained into a ghostly skeletal shade of white, while a cold panicked sweat completely drenched her entire frame. Shen Luyun, bring me my medication. I need you to get my pills right now. She aggressively gritted her teeth against the blinding pain, weakly whimpering my name into the darkness with the absolute last of her fading strength. Yet the only thing that offered an answer to her desperate cry was a dead mocking silence of the empty air. Her fried brain had temporarily blocked out the brutal reality. I had permanently cut the cord and walked out of her life ages ago, and was now legally bound to He Jixin. Wave after relentless wave of sharp internal agony was practically dragging her to the absolute brink of total insanity. After what felt like a grueling eternity of suffering, she finally managed to forcefully drag her broken, trembling body upward. Staggering unsteadily out of the massive bed, she violently yanked open the nightstand drawer, frantically tearing through the empty space in a desperate search for her stomach pills. How the hell is this empty? Shen Luyun always, without fail, kept this exact drawer perfectly stocked with my medication. Then the agonizing reality finally hit her, delayed consciousness like a freight train. I was gone. Lin Xingxing clumsily stumbled out of the bedroom door into the hallway. The butler immediately clocked her utterly wretched, collapsing state, and frantically rushed forward to support her weight, quickly administering the life-saving stomach medication. He earnestly, desperately pleaded with her, his voice heavy with genuine concern. Miss, no matter how chaotic your corporate empire gets, you absolutely must feed yourself on a strict schedule. Your digestive system is incredibly fragile. You need to actively guard your health at all times. Are you feeling any relief yet, Miss? Is there absolutely anything specific your stomach can handle eating right now? I will immediately instruct Chef Wang to whip it up for you. Once the potent medication finally settled in her system, Lin Xingxing's ghostly drained complexion slowly began to regain its color. I absolutely need a hot bowl of ginseng chicken soup right now. The demand slipped out of her mouth entirely on pure instinct. That distinct, richly aromatic and savory flavor profile seemed to be permanently deeply branded into the dark recesses of her mind. Chef Wang didn't overthink the sudden craving, promptly brewing a piping hot pot of ginseng chicken soup and serving it directly to her. Yet the exact millisecond she took a single solitary sip, the slightly greasy, unrefined flavor flooded her hypersensitive stomach, instantly obliterating her appetite into absolute nothingness, and triggering a violent wave of pure unadulterated nausea. This flavor is completely and utterly wrong. Lin Xingxing's face instantly contorted into an icy, thunderous glare, and with a sharp smack, she violently backhanded the porcelain bowl, shattering it on the floor. The butler and Chef Wang awkwardly exchanged frantic, terrified glances, their faces completely covered in immense sweating anxiety. But miss, this batch was prepared down to the microscopic detail according to Mr. Shen's exact personal recipe. I swear on my life, I executed everything to the absolute best of my abilities. Chef Wang whimpered, her voice trembling violently with sheer dread. Lin Seng tightly furrowed her brows in deep irritation and aggressively marched her way straight into the massive kitchen, attempting to piece together the culinary instructions I had patiently drilled into her memory, viciously executing the process step by agonizing step. Wrong. Every single thing about this is completely wrong. She furiously smashed one porcelain dish after another into the sink, the chaotic toxic irritation in her chest growing too massive to contain. The operational process was completely flawlessly identical, yet the resulting flavor failed to replicate the masterpiece she desperately craved. Is it seriously because that bastard is no longer standing by my side? The more Lin Xingxing spiraled into that dark train of thought, the more her explosive fury flared, until she violently snapped, systematically reducing the entire high-end kitchen to absolute shattered ruins. Living a life completely devoid of Shen Luyun will have zero catastrophic impact on my empire. The only man who holds the keys to my heart is Xu. She forcefully brainwashed herself, repeating the desperate lie over and over through bloodshot, tear-filled eyes. After a grueling eternity of forced composure, desperate to completely paralyze her hyperactive, guilty conscience, she peeled out of the driveway and sped straight to the corporate headquarters to bury herself in the massive mountain of backlogged artwork. For several grueling consecutive days, Lin Xingxing aggressively practically lived inside the walls of the corporate office. But because I had officially handed in my resignation and severed ties, the fundamental atmosphere of the entire corporate ecosystem felt distinctly, ominously fractured. High-stakes project timelines were suddenly hitting massive, unexpected roadblocks, and the internal synergy among the executive staff was nowhere near as seamless as it used to be. Petty corporate friction and explosive boardroom arguments became an everyday, exhausting occurrence, simultaneously dragging Lin Xingxing's mental and physical state down into absolute chaotic shambles. Inside the grand executive boardroom, Lin Xingxing sat at the head of the table, her face completely masked in a dark, thunderous scowl. She violently slammed the business proposal down onto the mahogany table. Is this absolute garbage the best you can do for the National Park project? Yeah, if the next pitch deck you present looks anything like this generic trash, you can all pack your bags and consider yourselves permanently fired. This entire bidding document drastically conflicts with our core strategy. How did this clear discrepancy pass your supposed quality checks? Committing such a rookie entry-level mistake is utterly pathetic. I am seriously forced to re-evaluate whether any of you are even competent. Who the hell was directly spearheading the partnership negotiations for this account? The entire boardroom immediately plunged into a dead, suffocating silence. Virtually every single project lead and department head had been ruthlessly torn to shreds. The terrified employees wanted nothing more than to sink straight through the floor, collectively enduring what felt like a brutal, never-ending psychological execution. After what felt like a grueling eternity of pure torture, Lin Xingxing finally barked the order to adjourn the meeting. The staff reacted as if they had just received a divine presidential pardon, scrambling out of the room to escape her wrath. Lin Xingxing let out a deep ragged exhale, collapsing weakly back into the cushions of her executive chair. Ever since I permanently walked out of her life, the fundamental matrix of her reality had completely derailed. The dedicated right-hand man who used to fight alongside her in the corporate trenches, the one soul she could completely confide in, was entirely gone. Now every single employee walked on eggshells around her, paralyzed by fear, causing overall corporate productivity to absolutely plummet. Even returning to her massive estate offered no escape from the icy isolation, despite the mansion being fully staffed with paid domestic workers. The comforting, warm ambiance of a real home had entirely evaporated. Years ago, when a horrific accident had left both of her legs completely paralyzed, I had personally hunted down world-renowned specialists to fully restore her mobility. Yet her joints were structurally, permanently weakened. Whenever a heavy storm rolled in, a deep arthritic ache would flare up, and over the past few days, the agonizing pain in her lower limbs had become utterly unbearable. Lin Xingxing weakly hammered her fists against her throbbing thighs. But the desperate action did absolutely nothing to dull the internal torment. Shen Luyun. She breathlessly whimpered my name into the empty room, as a suffocating wave of pure withdrawal and longing violently consumed her mind. She could vividly recall the precise tactile sensation of my warm hands, expertly massaging her muscles and administering targeted acupuncture to block out the pain. But that reality was dead. I had severed the cord for good, leaving her behind without a single backward glance. Every moving piece of her carefully constructed universe was spiraling out of control, forcing her to face the brutal consequences of her toxic choices. The severe manic bipolar episodes that I had spent a decade carefully managing were now aggressively resurfacing, clawing their way back to the surface. It was only at this exact devastating moment that Lin Xingxing was hit by the stark, terrifying realization. From the very beginning, it was never a case of me being pathologically codependent on her. She was the one who was completely, entirely incapable of surviving without me, without my constant presence in her life. Her entire everyday reality had completely degenerated into catastrophic chaos. Literally, nothing was functioning properly anymore. A deep toxic wave of heavy regret finally began creeping into Lin Xingxing's mind. She had arrogantly assumed she could effortlessly tolerate a future entirely devoid of my love and attention. Yet the harsh, unyielding reality was proving to be the exact polar opposite. Every single grueling minute and agonizing second since discovering my departure was spent utterly consumed by an intense, overwhelming longing for me, desperately praying that I would miraculously materialize before her eyes the very next second, and magically restore everything back to how it used to be. But the brutal truth remained that I was now legally bound to He Jixin, and for Lin Xingxing, merely letting that devastating thought cross her mind made it physically impossible to breathe. Just as she was forcefully gearing up to call He Jixin once more to demand answers, Sun Xiu's caller ID suddenly intercepted her screen, ringing aggressively. "Hey, Sing Sing, do you happen to remember that routine medical checkup I accompanied you to last time? Well, the official lab results just came in. You're officially pregnant. We're finally having a baby together. Aren't you absolutely ecstatic right now?" Lin Xingxing instantaneously froze solid right where she stood, her brain completely stalling, utterly incapable of formulating a response for a grueling eternity. Ecstatic shit. Logically speaking, she should be absolutely over the moon. Yet why was it that the very first emotion bursting through her chest wasn't profound joy, but rather a suffocating, blinding wave of pure, unadulterated panic? If she was carrying another man's child, how could she ever crawl back to drag me home? She had already inflicted so many horrific, unforgivable scars upon my soul, and now she was actively incubating Sun Xiu's biological offspring. Would I ever, under any cosmic circumstance, grant her a single shred of forgiveness? She was utterly terrified to even let her mind wander down that path, the dark realizations making her heart palpitate with escalating dread. Lin Xingxing stuttered out a shaky, stumbling response through trembling lips. "See you, is this child an absolute non-negotiable must-have for you right now?" Hearing such a shocking, completely unexpected question leave her mouth, the triumphant, ecstatic grin on Sun Xiu's face instantaneously hardened into stone. "Wait, what? Xingxing? I've been completely open about how desperately I want a child to fill this empty void, especially an heir that represents the unique bond between us, and Iman Kyusut. Didn't we thoroughly discuss and lock this dynamic in ages ago? Look, if your mind suddenly can't handle the reality of being a mother, or if you're pathologically terrified that Luyun is going to throw an insecure tantrum over it, then by all means go abort this baby and let him go breed with someone else. At the end of the day, I just want a healthy heir to call my own. It doesn't necessarily have to be cooked inside your stomach." For the first time in their dynamic, he completely lost his performative cool, his tone dripping with sharp anger. Lin Xingxing instantly plunged into a frantic state of pure panic. She scrambled, frantically stumbling over her words in a clumsy attempt to explain. "No, wait, that's completely wrong, Sue. I didn't mean that at all. I am fully 100% ready to embrace this child into my life. I was just caught completely off guard by how incredibly fast it all happened. Look, it's honestly completely fine, Xingxing. Decide. Whatever final decision you make, I will unconditionally validate and support it. If Luyun absolutely refuses to tolerate a baby from me, then we can just terminate the pregnancy and throw this future away. The absolute last thing I want is to sabotage your deep bond with Luyun. Even though Luyun has technically, officially, legally bound himself to someone else now, you still possess a massive, undeniable shot at winning him back." Sun Xiu masterfully deployed a calculated, manipulative guilt trip to reverse the psychology. And right on cue, the exact moment those words hit Lin Xingxing's ears, she made her absolute choice. "Xiu, listen to me. I am absolutely keeping this baby and birthing our child. I will fully execute every single ounce of my maternal responsibility to the absolute max. As for Luyun, I will personally handle the situation and clear the air with him. Even after he secures a divorce and rightfully crawls back home to my side, I swear to God he will never pose a single threat to our child's existence or safety. He worships the very ground I walk onto. So I am entirely confident he will naturally accept our baby as his own." Having successfully extracted the exact picture-perfect response he wanted, a sinister, triumphant smirk slowly carved its way across Sun Xiu's lips. Perfect. At the end of the day, it didn't matter how she rationalized it. All that truly mattered was that Lin Xingxing committed her massive wealth to bankrolling this child. With the colossal bulletproof shield of the Lin family empire guarding his back, the immense inheritance of the Sun family dynasty was practically guaranteed to fall straight into his greedy waiting hands. The exact microsecond she disconnected the call, a massive suffocating wave of instant regret violently slammed right into Lin Xingxing. She couldn't bring herself to abort the biological child growing inside her. Yet her fried brain possessed absolutely zero clues on how to manipulate me into returning, let alone how to force me to tolerate and raise another man's kid. After twisting her mind in an agonizing, chaotic loop of pure indecision, she ultimately chose to aggressively double down on sabotaging Hee Jiksen's corporate empire. Even though the massive headquarters of their respective conglomerates were stationed true in different territories, one dominating the capital city while the other anchored the coastal metropolis. Both mega corporations possessed heavily active regional branches in both zones. Their multi-billion-dollar business operations directly intersected and overlapped at every turn, most notably on the highly prestigious, high-stakes, state-sponsored development accounts, where the two juggernauts acted as lethal cutthroat primary adversaries. Once upon a time, Lin Xingxing's narcissistic mind completely failed to comprehend exactly why Hee Jiksen was so pathologically hell-bent on obliterating the Lin family legacy. 5 long years ago, the core commercial operations of the He and Lin dynasties barely crossed paths at all. But the exact second Hee Jiksen aggressively seized the absolute throne of the He family enterprise, she systematically expanded into identical industrial sectors, direct copying the Lin family's map, Yiyate, making it her life's singular mission to drag the Lin Empire into a bloody fight-to-the-death cage match. Hee Jiksen possessed lethal god-tier corporate strategy and execution, orchestrating millions of brilliant operations designed to explicitly sabotage the Lin family's momentum. Back then, Lin Xingxing's ego merely assumed Hee Jiksen was acting out of basic petty personal jealousy, that a long-standing historical blood feud existed between their dynasties. It was only now, in this absolute rock-bottom moment, with Hee Jiksen legally and tightly binding herself to me in marriage, that she finally realized the singular catalyst behind Hee Jiksen's relentless war against the Lin family was me. So now Lin Xingxing was deploying a calculated campaign to systematically target Hee Jiksen, ruthlessly copying the exact same aggressive corporate tactics that had been used against her. She was utterly determined to bleed her rival dry until Hee Jiksen was forced to beg for a face-to-face meeting. Lin Xingxing buried herself alive in a never-ending mountain of executive tasks at the office, even cold-heartedly turning down Sun Xiu's desperate request for a romantic date multiple times. Sun Xiu didn't seem even remotely heartbroken or affected by the rejection. Instead, he casually sent over a few performative text updates and photos of him lounging at home, just to keep her completely unsuspecting, pacified, and focused on her work. Lin Xingxing didn't read into the calculated behavior for a single microsecond, foolishly swallowing his cheap domestic charade as absolute gospel truth. Until this fateful night, when Jiang Qingfei abruptly pinged her phone with a stealthy paparazzi-style snapshot taken inside a VIP club lounge. Under the dim, intoxicatingly sultry glow of the neon lights, Sun Xiu was wrapped tightly around a stunning, incredibly voluptuous woman. The two were aggressively locked in an intense tongue-twisting embrace, devouring each other's lips with reckless, insatiable hunger. The woman's wandering hands were already sliding under Sun Xiu's designer clothes without a shred of shame. Lin Xingxing, strictly speaking, as your former absolute best friend. This is officially the absolute final reality check I will ever throw your way. Sun Xiu is a manipulative, low-life piece of trash through and through, even with you actively carrying his biological offspring in your stomach right now. He hasn't skipped a single beat in hooking up with random club tramps behind your back. The exact second you suffer another crisis and lose your massive corporate utility to him, he will drop you like a hot stone without a single drop of hesitation, happily replacing you with whatever rich woman crosses his path next. He might even kick you while you're down just to secure his own bag. If you choose to remain willfully blind and completely obsessed with this parasitic clown, then you can consider our friendship officially permanently dead from this moment on. Jiang Qingfei's text message was loaded with heavy, unyielding weight, dripping with pure frustration over her friend's total lack of a spine. Lin Xingxing stared at that damning photo, zooming in and scrolling over it a million times, her eyes instantly inflating into a bloodshot demonic shade of crimson, as pure unadulterated shock and fury threatened to tear her vision apart. I am actively nurturing his bloodline inside my own body. So why the hell is he out here fondling random women in a dirty club? Have I not treated him like an absolute king over these past few weeks? I completely wiped his slate clean, completely ignored his disgusting past, Ishisalm, and sacrificed my entire soul just to bankroll his pathetic lifestyle. Why is he still actively, ruthlessly trampling all over my heart? An apocalyptic tidal wave of raw, primitive rage instantly flooded her chest. Lin Xingxing hammered out a few sharp, lethal words with violent taps against her screen. Send me the exact address. I am turning that place upside down right now. The moment Jiang Qingfei dropped the live GPS coordinates, Lin Xingxing slammed her foot on the accelerator, tearing through the city streets at breakneck speed. Standing just outside the heavy soundproof VIP lounge door, she radiated a terrifying bone-chilling aura of pure malice. Jiang Qingfei instinctively took several steps back, completely unwilling to get caught in the impending crossfire. Meanwhile, the two inside the VIP lounge were still locking lips as if nobody else existed. Deepening the kiss with disgusting intensity, Sun Xiu expertly came up for air, his hands already wandering suggestively across her chest. And are you ready for this? Sun Xiu's fingers slowly snaked their way up her skirt, perfectly poised and locked in position. The absolute millisecond she gave him the green light, he was ready to viciously rip her clothes off. Of course, baby. I'm completely yours tonight. But I heard that corporate heiress is actively carrying your child. You aren't going to just discard me, are you, babe? Sun Xiu aggressively squeezed her waist, forcing her legs apart. Are you crazy? Of course I won't. I'm merely using Lin Xingxing to incubate my biological heir. Once that kid is born, the entire Sun family fortune is legally mine. And that's just the warm-up. So I'm coming for the entire Lin family empire next, he sneered, his eyes dripping with pure venom. As for Shen Luyun, that pathetic loser was simply too damn naive. Imagine spending a whole decade blindly simping for Lin Xingxing, sacrificing his entire life for absolutely zero return. He completely deserved to get wrecked. Honestly, whether he crawls back to her side or not makes zero difference to me. The moment Lin Xingxing pops out the kid currently baking in her womb, every single asset the Lin family owns will seamlessly slide into my pockets. By the way, Xia An, did you secure that specific chemical compound I asked for? The exact moment she successfully delivers this baby, I'm going to start secretly dosing Lin Xingxing with it, so make damn sure you don't screw up my timeline. Xia An looked visibly conflicted as she reluctantly pulled out a small vial, which Sun Xiu instantly snatched right out of her hands, watching him sadistically scan the pharmaceutical label with a sinister grin. Xia An felt a sudden fleeting pang of human conscience. Are you absolutely certain you want to drive Lin Xingxing to mental extinction? This is a highly illegal black market chemical agent. The systemic damage it inflicts on the human brain is catastrophic, and completely 100% irreversible. Aren't you even slightly terrified of what she'll do to you if she finds out? She was a rogue medical professional Sun Xiu had corrupted during his time abroad, and had followed him back to the country as his personal co-conspirator. Sourcing this kind of illicit contraband is a total nightmare. She had burned massive favors and taken extreme risks to secure it, so she was naturally paranoid about the entire operation blowing up in their faces, and dragging her down to prison along with him. Sun Xiu, however, merely let out a dismissive, arrogant laugh. Once my mind is set on a target, absolutely nobody can talk me out of it. The instant that baby is delivered, I am standardizing her daily doses of this psychoactive drug without fail. Relax, babe. Even if she somehow unravels the truth down the line, she is so pathetically infatuated with me that she won't even care enough to retaliate. She worships me, obsessed to the point where she'll unconditionally surrender her entire life for my happiness. It's merely a minor systemic side effect on her physical health, meaning she simply won't be able to breed any more children after this. Besides, I'm actually throwing my life away to be with her, even granting her a biological child of her own, and entirely overlooking the fact that she's a second-hand good used by Shen Luyun. What more could that corporate bitch possibly complain about? As he spoke, he let out a toxic, patronizing sneer, completely trampling Lin Xingxing's profound, desperate love straight into the dirt. To a cold-blooded parasite like him, genuine romance was the absolute most useless liability on Earth, and simultaneously the ultimate weaponizable asset. By ruthlessly exploiting Lin Xingxing's blind devotion toward him, he could effortlessly execute his entire multi-million-dollar agenda. Sun Xiu triumphantly gripped the illicit chemical vial tightly in his palm, his blueprint for total corporate conquest already perfected, now merely waiting for the biological clock to tick down. Noticing the rising visible terror plastered across Xia An's face, he pulled her close to offer some smooth reassurance. Take a deep breath, my sweet Xia An. I would never dream of turning these sinister chess moves against you. The exact millisecond my corporate takeover crosses the finish line, generational wealth and absolute luxury await both of us. Lin Xingxing is too blinded by my charm to ever dig for the truth. So just relax and trust the process. Xia An could only offer a bitter, anxious nod of agreement. I truly hope you're right. The two depraved lovers melted back into a warm, sickening embrace. Meanwhile, Lin Xingxing stood frozen stiff right outside the door, having explicitly overheard every single syllable of their demonic conspiracy. She felt as if she had been abruptly hurled into an icy abyssal hellscape. Iwokiki. The blood in her veins instantly freezing solid. The exact narcissistic, dismissive rhetoric she had hurled at me for a decade had just miraculously boomeranged back to inflict poetic justice upon her own soul. It was only now, experiencing these lacerating betrayals firsthand, that she could genuinely sympathize and bleed with the exact apocalyptic agony I endured when her own infidelity came to light. Her chest felt as if it had been savagely ripped wide open, allowing an icy howling wind to violently violate her inner being, leaving her entire heart looking like a mangled, bloody mass of raw tissue. throbbing with a blinding, unbearable level of pure trauma. This suffocating, hopeless despair was a bitter pill that tasted absolutely horrific. Lin Xingxing's eyes darkened into a pitch-black abyss of pure rage, her face twisting into a sinister, bloodthirsty expression. She violently kicked the lounge door wide open, instantly bearing a vicious fist straight into Xiaan's face, sending her flying across the room. Then, with her eyes completely injected with bloodshot fury, she locked both hands onto Sun Xiu's throat, squeezing with lethal force. Sun Xiu, you really think you're some kind of untouchable mastermind, don't you? You locked onto the fact that I was hopelessly infatuated with you, assuming I'd never have the spine to actually destroy you, right? As the oxygen inside his lungs rapidly depleted to zero, Sun Xiu's face bloated into a sickening shade of deep crimson and purple, clutching and scratching frantically at Lin Xingxing's iron grip as he thrashed around in pure suffocating agony. Lin Xingxing, let go. I beg of you. His voice croaked out like a broken, rattling engine, fat, heavy tears rolling down his cheeks and splashing onto Lin Xingxing's hands. Yet she didn't flinch or loosen her grip even a microscopic fraction, her gaze overflowing with an apocalyptic tidal wave of raw hatred. Sun Xiu, I swear to God I loathe your generic existence with every fiber of my being. Every single massive sacrifice I ever made to build you up was reduced to nothing but cheap clout for you to flex behind my back at Tila. And yet I swallowed my pride and tolerated it. The second I was paralyzed and lost my corporate utility, you dumped me like trash. And I still stupidly forgave you. When you saw me stage a miraculous comeback and build an empire, you crawled back, demanded I abort Shen Luyun's biological child, and forced me to harvest his kidney just to save your pathetic life. I let you get away with every single bit of that horrific trauma, solely because I was blindly, pathologically obsessed with you. But how did you repay my absolute devotion? What the hell did you actually view me as, Imoxus? Just some convenient, brainless ATM for your corporate takeover. I am a living, breathing human being, you sociopathic parasite. My heart is made of flesh and bone, and I bleed just like anyone else, Sun Xiu. Did you absolutely have to be this ruthlessly sadistic to me? Lin Xingxing screeched at the absolute top of her lungs, unleashing the entire volcanic buildup of her psychological torment. Sun Xiu's desperate flailing against her forearms grew visibly weaker by the second, his suffocating body slowly losing the strength to resist, as his vocal cords completely failed to produce a single sound, his eyes rolling back into his head, seeing that he was quite literally on the absolute brink of brain death, and about to lose consciousness permanently. Lin Xingxing finally reluctantly loosened her lethal grip. However, the volcanic fury burning within her eyes didn't show a single sign of fading. Sun Xiu began hacking and wheezing hysterically, coughing so violently he looked ready to literally spit out his own lungs. Yaok. His face plastered with the sheer trembling relief of surviving a near-death experience. It took a grueling eternity for his scattered consciousness to slowly reboot, and instantly the manipulative tears began cascading down his face even harder. Xingxing, please? You've completely misunderstood the situation. I swear to God I never ever intended to sabotage or hurt you. I'm serious, I never did. My love for you is 100% genuine. I was just cornered with absolutely zero options. If I don't aggressively fight for the Sun family inheritance, I will be stripped of absolutely everything I own, and literally end up rotting on the streets. You wouldn't want to see me reduced to a homeless beggar, right? Lin Xingxing let out a thoroughly hollow, despairing laugh, a twisted expression that looked infinitely more agonizing than actual crying. It is truly mind-blowing that even after being completely exposed, you still possess the absolute audacity to put on a performance and lie to my face. You repeatedly bark about how much you supposedly love me, yet while you were crawling into my bed and begging me to conceive your biological offspring, you were simultaneously sleeping with random club tramps behind my back. What, was a single child simply not enough to satisfy your greed? Or is your parasitic nature just fundamentally coded to be this utterly vile and cheap? You claim you had no choice because you desperately coveted the Sun family assets. You could have easily laid the truth bare and just told me. I would have gladly weaponized my empire to conquer it all for you. But why the hell are you so insatiably greedy that you plotted to swallow the entire Lin family legacy whole, to the point of secretly dosing me with a black market chemical to render me permanently sterile? The exact microsecond you actually agreed to marry me, whether it was the Sun family fortune or the entire Lin empire, all of it would have seamlessly become your personal playground anyway. What more could your greedy soul have possibly desired? Why did you deliberately choose to drag my absolute devotion through the mud like this? Lin Xingxing's words cut deep, dripping with raw, bleeding emotional trauma, as she delivered her thunderous, final interrogation. Sun Xiu turned a ghostly, deathly shade of white, and his face contorted in an awkward, cornered panic, as his lips trembled and twitched mindlessly, completely incapable of generating a coherent defense for a very long time. The entire VIP lounge instantaneously plunged into a suffocating dead silence. After what felt like a painful eternity, he finally managed to stammer out a shaky, stumbling response. It's not the same thing at all. Those two scenarios are completely fundamentally different. But as for what exactly made them so different, he absolutely refused to confess the ugly truth. Lin Sing's eyes were completely overflowing with pure, unadulterated disappointment, her voice dropping to a sharp, bone-chilling frost. Can't bring yourself to say it out loud? Then let me lay it out flat and say it for you. You realize that simply marrying me means the Sun and Lin fortunes won't entirely belong to you. Sun Siyu, you are so pathologically, unsustainably greedy. But have you actually ever taken a good hard look in the mirror, Sikikit? Do you honestly think you possess the raw talent or brainpower to control an empire? Aside from manipulating me and manipulating these cheap, trashy club girls, what else have you actually ever accomplished in your pathetic life? You can't even compare to a single shred of Shen Luyun. The moment his inner malice was laid bare, Sun Siyu instantly dropped his fake sniveling victim act and furiously barked back in retaliation. Shen Luyun? How the hell can that pathetic loser even be compared to a mastermind like me? We aren't even standing on the same starting line. He's completely inferior to me. He simped for a whole decade and still failed to secure your heart. Eat while I effortlessly wrapped you around my little finger and locked you down in 0 time. Is that not absolute undisputed proof of my superiority? The fact that I can easily charm, seduce, and manipulate multiple high-value women into blindly obeying my every command. How the hell is that not considered a god-tier talent? He let out a casual, highly arrogant laugh, his eyes completely brimming with unadulterated venom. Lin Sing, I know for a fact that you worship the ground I walk on. Our biological heir is already baking in your womb, so stop throwing this dramatic, insecure little tantrum. Isn't all of this theatrical crying just because you want me to cut ties with those random side chicks? Fine, consider them officially blocked and deleted. Moving forward, I'll happily put a ring on your finger, and our perfect little family of 3 will live the absolute high life together. Let's just wipe the slate completely clean and forget about everything before tonight. We can start fresh with a clean slate, alright, babe. He stood there with ultimate smug confidence, waiting for Lin Xing's predictable submission. Yet this time, from beginning to end, her expression remained dead hollow and absolutely freezing. Sun Siyu, I swear to God, I regret ever letting myself love a parasitic mistake like you. Because of you, I completely destroyed and lost my future with Shen Luyun. The only reason your pathetic charade ever worked on me in the past was solely because I chose to blindly love you and turn a blind eye. Otherwise, looking at your incredibly basic, clumsy manipulation tactics. You never possessed anywhere near enough brain cells to actually deceive me. But as of this exact microsecond, my love for you is officially permanently dead. I am completely discarding you like trash. Sun Siyu, Lin Sing's voice dropped into a terrifyingly calm dead silence. It didn't contain even a microscopic hint of emotion, sounding as if she were casually discussing a total stranger's business. Yet, the chaotic storm inside her soul was light years away from her deadpan facade. To completely permanently sever ties with a toxic parasite she had worshipped for over a decade, and to forcefully evict him from her life right now, felt exactly like aggressively gouging a jagged bleeding hole into her own chest, to rip out a piece of putrid, deeply infected flesh. The agonizing psychic damage nearly caused her to completely black out, but she forced herself to endure it. She still had a mess of loose ends to ruthlessly burn down. Lin Sing violently clamped her teeth down on her own tongue, the sharp metallic taste of warm blood instantaneously flooding her mouth. The shocking burst of physical pain snapped her brain right back into focus. As for this unwanted bastard child inside me, Sun Siyu, it's getting aborted immediately. I refuse to let a single trace of your disgusting DNA continue to pollute this earth. The second the words left her lips, she turned her freezing, vacant gaze away to exit, only for Sun Siyu to desperately leap forward and tackle her from behind. Sing number. I completely screwed up, I admit it, Geet. I swear to God, I finally realized how horribly wrong I was. Can you please just forgive me this one last time? You already granted me absolute amnesty 1,000,000 times in the past. So what's one more second chance between us? Besides, wasn't my toxic behavior completely enabled and spoiled by you in the first place? You bear some of the legal responsibility for making me this way. I swear nothing actually happened between Xia-an and me tonight. Please, you have to believe me, even if you completely distrust my words right now. At least grant me a final probation period to prove myself. I swear on my life I will step up and be a flawless father. He locked his arms around her waist with a frantic vice-like grip, his cracking voice sounding utterly shattered and pathetic. A continuous torrent of lukewarm tears cascaded down his face, completely soaking through the fabric of Lin Xing's upper back, and seeping straight through her clothes, yet her icy heart remained completely dead. Not a single spark of her old naive sympathy could be resurrected from the ashes. Cold and completely detached, Lin Xing didn't say a word. as she systematically brutally pried his locked fingers open one by one, not caring in the slightest about, violently bruising his hands and snapping his grip in the process. Listen closely. Sun Siyu, terminating this pregnancy is not a negotiable discussion. It is an absolute executive order, and I am granting you zero authority to reject it. This parasite will absolutely not see the light of day. If you want to go breed with some other random club tramp in the future, whatever bastards you produce will have absolutely zero connection to me. The freezing razor-sharp words hammered directly into Sun Tzu's soul, and for the first time in his narcissistic life, absolute terror gripped his heart. No, please don't murder my golden ticket, don't kill my baby. He shrieked at the top of his lungs, begging like a dog, collapsing straight down onto his knees in utter humiliation. However, several stone-faced Lin family bodyguards instantly stepped forward, pinning him to the floor, lying on the freezing sterile metal of the operating table. It took mere moments for the unwanted fetus to be completely scraped from Lin Xingxing's body, with the pregnancy officially terminated. Lin Xingxing didn't shed a single solitary tear of grief. Instead, she felt a profound wave of sheer relief wash over her. If this parasitic mistake had actually been allowed to draw breath, I would have officially blown any remaining shot at begging for Luyun's forgiveness. From this exact second onward, she vowed to slowly liquidate every single debt from her past sins. Every drop of trauma she owed me, she would systematically compensate for piece by piece. Lin Xingxing regained consciousness shortly after the abortion procedure was completed. Clutching her throbbing, intensely aching lower abdomen, she instantaneously broke down, weeping herself into a complete mess. Right outside the operating theater, Sun Tzu was sobbing hysterically in a state of absolute psychological collapse. Yet not a single soul stepped forward to offer him an ounce of comfort. I completely ruined it. I completely, utterly screwed up. The entire Sun family empire. My golden ticket is permanently gone. Where the hell is Zia An? Where is that useless bitch? Why hasn't she come out here to fabricate an alibi for me? The moment his toxic venomous curses were about to fly out of his mouth, Lin Xingxing's cold, hollow voice instantly cut him off dead in his tracks. Save your worthless breath. Jia An has already been locked away by federal agents for smuggling black market chemicals. As for you, you won't be joining her in a cell quite yet. Are you serious, Ait? So I'm completely off the hook. Sun Tzu completely failed to comprehend the sinister undertone of her words, naively assuming Xia An had taken the entire legal fall for him, leaving his own hands perfectly clean. The very next microsecond, Lin Xingxing's next words completely obliterated his pathetic delusional fantasy. Don't be ridiculous. You haven't paid back a single fraction of the agony you inflicted on Luyun. So how could I possibly let you take the easy way out in prison just yet? Jiang Qingfei, I need a favor. In a few days, once Sun Tzu's vital signs stabilize from this shock, schedule an immediate back alley surgical extraction. Harvest that stolen kidney currently functioning inside his disgusting body. An organ that never belonged to a parasitic roach like him must naturally be forcefully ripped out and returned to its rightful owner. Hearing this phenomenally unhinged lethal decree, Jiang Qingfei stood frozen in absolute shock, her brain entirely failing to process the horror. Lin Xingxing, have you completely legally lost your goddamn mind? An organ that's already been harvested and transplanted cannot magically be shoved back in Saitia. Furthermore, considering Sun Tzu's fragile physical state, if you violently rip that kidney out of him right now, he will literally end up as a corpse on your table. Are you seriously trying to drive him straight into an early grave? Sun Tzu completely lost his absolute mind in pure panic, instantly dropping all pride to beg like a pathetic groveling dog. Lin Xingxing, please. I swear to God, I completely realize the error of my ways. I'll get down on my knees and beg for Shen Luyun's forgiveness every single day. Just please, I am begging you, don't butcher me and harvest my kidney, alright? I don't want to die. I genuinely, desperately do not want to die. As he shrieked, his trembling body cringed and actively shrunk backward, wishing he could literally melt into the cracks of the wall just to escape this nightmare. Not a chance. Luyun's kidney never belonged inside a parasitic roach like Sun Tzu to begin with. Even if it can't be surgically reattached to his body, it must still be forcefully ripped out and returned to Luyun, leaving it entirely up to his discretion to flush it down the toilet if he pleases. There is absolutely zero room for negotiation on this matter. Lin Xingxing's gaze was pitch black and dead, carrying an absolute dictatorial finality that tolerated zero resistance. Jiang Qingfei was instantaneously struck, completely dumb by the sheer horror. She had never imagined that once Lin Xingxing's infatuation died, she would execute such apocalyptic revenge. However, she also lacked any real leverage to override Lin Xingxing's ultimate authority. After a suffocating eternity, Jiang Qingfei let out a heavy, deeply defeated sigh. Fine. I will schedule the pre-op medical screenings as fast as humanly possible. But what the hell do we do with Sun Tzu after the organ extraction? Lin Sing Sing replied with an icy, thoroughly indifferent shrug. Hook him up to a dialysis machine temporarily just to barely sustain his vital signs. The absolute second he crawls and begs for Luyun's forgiveness, said, unplug him and leave him to rot and die under his own power. The moment she finished speaking, she turned and stormed out of the hospital without looking back, completely erasing Sun Xiu's existence from her brain. From this exact microsecond onward, every single detail of Sun Xiu's pathetic destiny had absolutely zero to do with her, severing the toxic chains of this decade-long obsession. Didn't actually feel anywhere near as impossible as she had originally fantasized. Yet her hollow chest still throbbed with a dull, persistent agony, serving as a perpetual, agonizing reminder of the immense trauma she had inflicted. Lin Sing Sing aggressively clutched her chest, struggling to force oxygen into her lungs. But this fleeting psychological pain was a drop in the bucket compared to the apocalyptic damage she did to me. After all, she was the monster who personally ordered the forced abortion of our child. She was the one who poured the heavily drugged milk that knocked me out before my kidney was harvested. And during that horrific kidnapping incident, she was the literal reason I was shoved straight into lethal danger. She had systematically shattered and traumatized my soul too many damn times to count. She truly deeply recognized the horrific weight of her sins now. She was drowning in absolute suffocating regret. But what god-tier miracle could she possibly perform to make me ever grant her forgiveness? Lost in a trance of pure existential despair, Lin Sing Sing blindly wandered until she found herself standing right outside the gates of their old international high school, instantly recognizing her face right on the spot. He beamed a wide, friendly smile and enthusiastically called out, "Well, if it isn't Student Lin, my bad, I suppose I should be calling you CEO Lin now? I honestly never imagined I'd run into you in the flesh ever again. To be completely fair, it's been an absolute eternity since you last stepped foot on campus. Back in the day, you were the undisputed superstar of this entire school. Together with student Shen Luyun, the two of you were crowned the twin legends of Jingxi International. Even to this very second, the underclassmen are still whispering about the legendary status you two left behind. And talk about an absolute cosmic coincidence. Just a short while ago, student Shen Luyun actually dropped by the campus as well. He mentioned he was here to pay his old professors a nostalgic visit. Are you rolling through today for the exact same trip down memory lane as him?" Lin Sing Sing was completely caught off guard by this revelation, her pupils aggressively shrinking in pure shock. She bolted forward, tightly gripping the security guard's calloused, rough hand. Shen Luyun, he was actually standing right here not too long ago. Where exactly did he go inside? Do you remember his precise route? I want to retrace his exact steps and walk through every single spot he touched. The guard was completely rattled by her sudden, desperate outburst, staring at her up and down several times over, just to confirm he hadn't somehow misidentified the powerful billionaire, before nervously stammering out a reply. Well, that day after student Shen finished wrapping up his visits with the staff, he headed straight for the old campus woods, the exact spot where you guys planted trees for Arbor Day community service. As for his specific business back there, I'm completely in the dark. Perhaps if you head over to that grove yourself, the answers will present themselves. Thank you so much. Having finally secured a concrete direction, Lin Sing Sing sprinted toward the dense grove, guided solely by her chaotic memories. Every single tree in this quiet forest belonged to a specific alumnus, each trunk adorned with a customized nameplate, detailing the exact graduating year, the classroom number, and the precise identity of the student who cultivated it. She frantically searched through dozens of trunks until her eyes finally locked onto the specific tree boasting Shen Luyun's nameplate. However, the violent gouges and deep scratches carved into the bark were blindingly painful to look at, evidently defaced and systematically hacked away just a few days prior. Lin Sing Sing stood frozen, frantically digging through the deep recesses of her mind for what felt like an eternity, before she could barely piece together a long-forgotten, fractured memory from the past. Back during their elite high school era, he, myself, and that toxic parasite Sun Xiu were the absolute apex trio commanding the school's social ladder. The three of them had practically grown up together as inseparable childhood friends. Yet her hyper-fixated gaze had only ever registered the existence of Sun Xiu. Consequently, she had completely desensitized herself to absolutely everything regarding my existence. On that specific Arbor Day, her close circle of friends had accidentally discovered a hidden carving that read, "Shen Luyun is hopelessly in love with Lin Sing Sing." They immediately began teasing her in a chorus of playful envy, giggling about just how insanely blessed she was to possess his heart, gushing about how both of her handsome childhood friends were constantly orbiting around her. But back then, she had merely given a freezing, nonchalant shrug and declared, "I have zero use for irrelevant background characters crowding my personal space." And as fate would have it, Shen Luyun was precisely that irrelevant nobody. Only now, standing here in the present, did Lin Sing Sing finally put the pieces together and realize that I had likely overheard her brutal, crushing words that day, which explained why he gradually ghosted her and distanced himself from her life, choosing to lock his profound devotion to her deep inside his own soul, never daring to approach her again, and never wanting to be a nuisance. If Sun Siyu hadn't ruthlessly dumped and abandoned him 5 years ago, perhaps he would have gone to his grave never discovering that during the entire era he was blindly worshipping Sun Siyu. I had also been secretly deeply in love with him for all those agonizing years. But now the romantic confessions I had painstakingly carved into the bark were completely erased. I had officially permanently deleted her from his heart. Lin Sing felt a sudden agonizing twist of a knife directly in her chest, rendering her completely unable to even suck in a single breath of air. This reality was a pill she absolutely refused to swallow. She practically sprinted to buy a pocket knife, returning to the trunk to aggressively carve a brand new declaration stroke by stroke. Shen Luyun and Lin Xing will be locked together for all eternity. Following that, she systematically visited every single landmark that held a piece of our shared past. On the famous Lover's Bridge, the customized padlock engraved with our names had been entirely cut down and lost. But she told herself it was fine, conning herself into believing she could simply purchase a brand new lock to replace it. Inside the ancient walls of Miaoying Temple, Lin Xing tracked down the head abbot, cornering him with an incredibly frantic, breathless interrogation. "Please, master, where are the sacred red prayer ribbons that Shen Luyun tied up years ago? Can you immediately escort me to the grove so I can read them?" In the past, she had only casually heard from my own mouth that I had offered countless divine prayers for his health and success. Yet she never bothered to inspect the ribbons to see what I actually wished for, simply because she couldn't care less. The abbot hesitated, his lips twitching as he visibly held back his words, his expression a complex tapestry of pity and disapproval. After a long, heavy silence, he pressed his palms together in a traditional blessing and let out a profound echoing sigh. "Amitabha, Benefactor Lin, it was only a brief moment ago that you personally paid a staggering 5 million in donation funds for the sole purpose of having every single prayer ribbon Benefactor Shen ever tied up forcefully torn down and incinerated into absolute ash. They have been entirely obliterated from existence, and there is absolutely nothing our temple can do to resurrect them." Hearing this devastating revelation, Lin Xing felt a sudden deafening explosion of static ring through her brain. What kind of unhinged, self-destructive monster had she actually been back then? Every single ounce of my pure devotion was systematically trampled and wasted by her like garbage. I absolutely deserved to be abandoned. I'll get out of his life. Lin Xing violently slapped her own face with a resounding crack, drowning in absolute suffocating self-loathing. After a long, agonizing eternity, she finally forced herself to calm down, staring with dead seriousness at the temple master abbot up. "I am prepared to immediately donate another 10 million in merit money right now, to have every single prayer ribbon I ever tied with Sun Tzu forcefully torn down, and replace them all with the heart-wrenching vows I am personally making for Shen Luyun." The abbot shook his head in absolute, helpless disappointment, letting out another deep, echoing sigh. What a hopelessly delusional child. Yet she didn't refuse her request at that, knowing all too well that once Lin Xing sets her manic mind on something, she will stop at absolutely nothing to execute it. Who knows how many grueling hours passed? But Lin Xing ended up handwriting over 10,000 completely unique, distinct prayers, painstakingly tying every single crimson silk ribbon to the branches with her own bleeding hands. A massive sea of red ribbons fluttered violently in the wind, each one representing a bleeding fragment of her newly awakened soul. May Shen Luyun find it in his heart to forgive Lin Xing, and may their broken bond be completely restored. May Lin Xing and Shen Luyun grow old together until their hair turns white, deeply in love and never to be parted. The second she stepped out of the Miaoying Temple grounds, Lin Xing rested for a single restless night, before boarding a private jet to storm straight into City S. During this past week, she had aggressively clashed with He Jixing in the business world a dozen times, only to end up narrowly defeated and utterly humiliated at every turn. Throughout those brutal corporate battles, she could instantly recognize the strategic fingerprints. It was unmistakably my signature tactical style. But since I absolutely refused to grant her an audience, she was left with zero options, and had to take the toxic initiative to hunt me down in person. Right outside the towering skyscraper of the He Group Corporation, Lin Xing stationed herself on the curb, flanked by a massive jaw-dropping fleet of luxury vehicles. Parked in a neat row, over 10,000 premium freshly cut roses were arranged to spell out, "Shen Luyun, please forgive me." Countless priceless antiques, luxury, hyper watches, and elite collector's items stuffed the trunks of the supercars to the brim, displayed as if they were completely worthless dollar store trinkets. Such an insanely theatrical spectacle instantaneously magnetized the attention of thousands of onlookers. Lin Xing even began throwing around ungodly amounts of cash, hiring random crowds to echo her apology to me. The terms were simple the moment they made eye contact with me and chanted the script. Lin Xing has deeply wronged you, and she truly begs for mercy. They would instantly pocket a crisp $10,000 cash reward. Naturally, a chaotic mob of thousands of pedestrians rushed forward to participate. The exact second He Jixing and I stepped through the main entrance of the corporate headquarters at Git, we slammed face first straight into this utterly chaotic over-the-top spectacle. Both of our expressions instantaneously darkened into pure freezing disgust. Lu Yun, Lin Xingxing has crawled all the way back here, begging for your absolution like a dog. Are you honestly considering turning back to her? Even though we've been living a wonderfully peaceful and blissfully happy life lately, He Jixing was still visibly drowning in a wave of deep emotional insecurity. After all, it was an undeniable fact that I had desperately worshipped Lin Xingxing for so many grueling years. His heart couldn't help but leap straight into his throat as he waited for my reaction. I immediately shot him a deeply reassuring grounding look, before gently reaching down to grasp his trembling hand. Interlocking our fingers tightly in a firm grip, I am never under any circumstances turning back to that toxic past. I never want to lay out eyes on her vile face for the rest of my life. He Jixing, you seriously need to start having a hell of a lot more confidence in yourself. If there is one solitary thing I genuinely regret about my past, it's that I didn't abandon Lin Xingxing light years sooner just to build a beautiful life with you. The absolute microsecond those words left my lips, He Jixing's eyes widened in sheer unadulterated shock. Seeing him look so adorably stunned, I let out a soft amused chuckle and leaned down, pressing a deep passionate kiss directly onto his lips. He Jixing, so my love for her has been dead and buried in it for an eternity. Right now, I'm actively pouring my entire soul into loving you. So do me a massive favor and unleash your inner demon to go drive that pest away. She's becoming a serious eyesore. He Jixing subconsciously ran his tongue over his lower lip, his fingertips gently tracing the exact spot where my lips had just been, his heart doing ecstatic backflips of pure euphoria. Understood. I will personally obliterate her presence from this block and ensure she never dares to pollute your line of sight ever again. As he spoke, he gently but firmly guided me back toward the safety of the lobby doors. The second I was out of the splash zone, his sweet, clumsy persona instantly vanished. His eyes narrowed into slits of pure calculated venom, his entire body radiating a suffocating, lethal aura of sheer corporate dominance. Exuding that terrifying energy, he marched straight into Lin Xingxing's personal space and violently launched a brutal, bone-crushing punch right into her jaw. Lin Xingxing, what kind of delusional mind games are you trying to play with my husband now? He just stated in plain English that he will never grant you absolution. This pathetic theatrical circus you've orchestrated is nothing short of embarrassing. You treated him like absolute trash when he was yours, systematically torturing and traumatizing Luyan too many times to count. And now you have the absolute audacity to pull this fake stunt, paying a flash mob to morally hostage take his emotions. Do you honestly possess the brain damage to think a circus like this will make him cave? Not in a million years. As the words tore from his throat, his physical assaults grew terrifyingly faster and more calculated, his eyes flashing with an unhinged, lethal crimson light. Every single punch and targeted kick was thrown with the explicit intent to beat Lin Xingxing into a bloody pulp. Lin Xingxing, completely cornered, pushed her physical limits to violently fight back against He Jixing. Luyun's soul belongs to me and me alone, you pathetic bastard. I admitted my sins and I am down on my knees begging him for absolution. I will crawl through broken glass, endure whatever sadistic punishment he demands, and suffer through it all willingly. But none of this concerns a third-party cockroach like you. You are nothing but an opportunistic scavenger who hijacked my property while he was broken. Don't you dare delude yourself into thinking he could ever genuinely love a fraud like you. The two rivals clashed in a savage, chaotic brawl, every single strike aimed at vital organs with maximum lethal intent, leaving absolutely zero room for mercy or retreat, all while systematically hurling psychological daggers meant to shatter each other's sanity. He Jixing let out a mocking, venomous laughy. Love you, if he loved you, why the hell did he legally bind himself to me? If he loved you, why did he just passionately claim my lips and happily fulfill every single marital duty in our bed? Lin Xingxing, stop overinflating your own pathetic microscopic worth. His capacity to love you is dead, and his absolution is something you will never possess. You need to permanently bury that delusional hope. As he barked the insult, a massive vanguard of elite security personnel flooded the plaza. He Jixing was absolutely not a clean, honorable fighter who cared about fair play, as long as he successfully executed his primary objective of completely eradicating Lin Xingxing from this block. He couldn't care less if he deployed an entire army to get it done. This was his undisputed corporate kingdom. A heavily armed squadron of guards instantly tackled Lin Xingxing, pinning her ruthlessly to the concrete. and completely neutralizing any remaining window for her to struggle or resist. Her body was rapidly accumulating severe deep lacerations and blunt trauma, yet her nervous system seemed entirely numb to the physical agony. Her hyperfixated eyes remained locked dead on my distant figure as she fought against her restraints like a maniac. Luyun, I am so deeply unforgivably sorry. Before she could finish, Lin Xingxing violently hacked up several mouthfuls of thick dark blood. Her internal organs completely ruptured and displaced from the sheer brutality of the beating, yet her obsessive unblinking gaze remained glued directly to my face, terrified to miss even a micro-expression or a single flicker of my reaction. He Drixing found the entire desperate display utterly repulsive and sickening, impatiently waving his hand in the air to signal the guards to drag the broken bleeding mess of Lin Xingxing out of his sight. He pulled out a premium sanitizer wipe, systematically and meticulously cleansing his knuckles and clothes of any trace of Lin Xingxing's disgusting blood. Only when he was entirely immaculate did he turn and walk back toward my position. Luyun, do you find my methods to be a bit too monstrously violent? His usually freezing, aristocratic face was suddenly a mask of deep, vulnerable anxiety. I slowly shook my head. Not at all. I just never anticipated that Lin Xingxing would actually possess the sheer audacity to crawl back to me. Shouldn't she be locked in an eternal blissful embrace with her precious Sun Xiu for the rest of her life? He Jixing then stepped forward, declassifying every single piece of dirt his intelligence network had dug up regarding Sun Xiu's absolute downfall. As the horrific list of Sun Xiu's degenerate treacheries echoed through the room, I was genuinely profoundly stunned. I never could have fathomed that Lin Xingxing's twisted version of remorse would manifest in such an apocalyptic explosion. But honestly, the entire scenario is nothing short of a cosmic joke. Back when I stood faithfully by her side for those grueling, agonizing years, pouring my entire soul into treating her like absolute royalty, it wasn't even remotely enough to spark a single ember of emotion in her frozen heart. Yet the exact second Sun Xiu actively targeted her own physical body for harvesting, while simultaneously sleeping around with another woman behind her back, treating her purely as a financial piggy bank to be completely drained, and orchestrating a hostile takeover to violently rip the Lin Empire from her hands. Only then did she finally snap out of her delusion and discard her pathetic infatuation with Sun Xiu. I guess it's a universal truth that until the blade is violently buried directly into your own flesh, you truly possess zero concept of what real agony feels like. If Sun Xiu's desperate need for an organ transplant had demanded her own kidney to be harvested instead of mine, would she have signed those consent forms with such effortless, smiling nonchalance? The exact same trauma inflicted upon Lin Xingxing's own precious body proved to be a pill that even she was entirely incapable of swallowing. No matter how pathologically intense her obsessive infatuation might have been, there was always going to be a final breaking point where it was entirely incinerated into nothingness. So under what delusional logic did she assume today that a few feather-light, pathetic murmurs of a forced apology would magically make me sprint straight back into her toxic embrace? The sheer unadulterated irony of it all makes me want to vomit. Even if she endures 1,000 times more physical mutilation for my sake than she did today, it wouldn't even begin to scratch the surface of compensating for the absolute psychological and physical hell she put me through. Rest easy, He Jixing. For every single second of my remaining existence on this earth, you are the only one who will ever hold my heart. I pulled He Jixing into a fierce, protective embrace, as if desperately trying to soothe the lingering trauma in his soul, while simultaneously trying to anchor my own fractured mind. He Jixing aggressively locked his arms around me in return. We are locked together for all eternity. Outside, a squadron of private security guards systematically dismantled and incinerated every trace of her repulsive circus, restoring the corporate plaza back to its pristine condition. He Jixing then escorted me back to the absolute sanctuary of our private estate. However, the absolute second we woke up and looked out the window the following morning, Lin Xingxing, who should have been thoroughly discarded and hospitalized light years away, had mysteriously materialized right outside the high security gates of our luxury villa. She was on her knees in the freezing torrential downpour, waiting for me with a manic, unyielding obsession, viciously resisting every single attempt by the security team to forcefully evict her from the perimeter. The severe lacerations and blunt trauma from yesterday's beating had been left completely untreated, erupting into a horrific, massive tapestry of deep purple and black contusions across her skin, looking utterly grotesque and ghoulish under the gray sky. Shen Luyun, I am so incredibly unforgivably sorry. I completely, utterly realized the error of my ways. She repeated the same agonizing phrases like a broken record, her voice thoroughly shredded and raspy from the strain. Yet she absolutely refused to let up for even a single second. The violent storm mercilessly pelted and drenched her broken frame, triggering a dull, agonizing throbbing from her old leg injuries. Her complexion gradually drained of all pigment, turning completely ghastly pale and devoid of life, as her upper body swayed unsteadily from side to side, looking as if she was on the absolute precipice of blacking out. Yet I didn't feel a single microscopic spark of pity or concern for her condition. I merely observed the entire pathetic display with freezing cold eyes, as if passively watching a trashy low-budget drama that had absolutely zero to do with me. How thoroughly laughable. She's actually resorted to executing a pathetic guilt trip stunt. Did she genuinely believe I would lose sleep over her physical health? That body belongs exclusively to her. Even if she drops dead right outside those gates, it has absolutely nothing to do with me. Muttering those thoughts, I smoothly broke my gaze away from the window, strolling over to the kitchen island to see what kind of gourmet dishes He Jixing was whipping up, and happily stepped in as his sous chef. The two of us operated in flawless, beautiful harmony, randomly flirting, teasing, and stealing warm embraces from one another, our faces radiating absolute bliss and bright, genuine smiles. During the meal, we playfully took turns feeding each other delicious bites. The domestic aura between us unbelievably sweet and romantic. Staring through the glass at this picture-perfect scene of domestic bliss, Lin Sing felt a sudden violent twist of a knife directly in her chest, her entire soul feeling as though it was being corroded and dissolved in a vat of acid. They looked so effortlessly beautifully in love. Yeah. This level of intimate, tender connection was something she and I had never shared in our entire lives. In the past, our dynamic resembled distant acquaintances, or a strict corporate boss and her subordinate, but we were absolutely everything except actual romantic lovers. Lin Sing had never in her life been forced to realize so clearly that in my eyes, He Jixing and her existed on entirely different cosmic dimensions. I had truly permanently closed the chapter on her existence, and was now actively successfully throwing my entire heart into loving He Jixing. How could this happen? A suffocating, blinding wave of physical agony erupted from her chest, rapidly radiating outward and paralyzing her entire central nervous system. Her lower limbs felt as though 1,000 heavy sledgehammers were brutally smashing her joints into dust, the intense torment leaving her completely breathless and gasping for air. Yet she stubbornly refused to stand up, and absolutely denied herself the option to throw in the towel. What if he looks out that window, sees my absolute misery, and feels a single drop of pity for me? Eek. However, Lin Sing's desperate manic gamble ultimately shattered into absolute nothingness. Right up until the exact millisecond her consciousness completely failed and she collapsed into the mud. I still absolutely refused to grant her an audience or show my face. Instead, He Jixing curled up warmly in my protective embrace, the space between our lips narrowing to absolute zero, as we naturally, passionately exchanged a deep, breathless kiss. By the time consciousness finally returned to her body, Lin Sing was staring blankly at the ceiling of Jingxi International Hospital, her hollow eyes completely devoid of light and soul. From the very beginning to the absolute end, I hadn't spared her a single drop of pity. A blinding bone-deep agony from her fractured legs erupted through her nervous system in relentless, suffocating waves, making even the slightest micro-movement an impossible battle, drowning in a hazy, feverish delirium. Lin Sing felt as though she had been forcefully dragged back 5 years into the past, reliving that exact same era of absolute suffocating despair. Except, everything is completely different this time around. Back then, she had lost absolutely everything in her life. Yet I was still right there, faithfully guarding her side. But now she commands an entire empire of wealth and status. Yet the one thing she is entirely powerless to obtain is me. The excruciating physical trauma tearing through her body was nothing compared to the apocalyptic devastation shattering her soul. Lin Sing shut her eyes in absolute suffocating despair, drowning silently in a dark ocean of pure unadulterated grief. Zhang Qingfei quietly pushed the heavy hospital door open, taking one look at her pathetic state before slowly shaking her head and letting out a profound heavy sigh. If you had known this apocalyptic heartbreak was waiting for you, why on earth did you commit those horrific sins in the first place? You were handed 1,000,000 golden opportunities to cut your losses and fix your life. Yet, you systematically ignored every single piece of urgent advice I gave you. What is the absolute point of begging Shen Luyun for absolution now? Deep down in your own soul, you already know the brutal truth. Oh, don't you? His capacity to love you is dead and buried forever. Continuing to pathologically harass him like a desperate stalker will do nothing but maximize his pure disgust for your existence. Lin Sing squeezed her eyelids shut even tighter, desperately pretending she was entirely deaf to the reality checking her. However, the violent trembling of her tightly bloodless lips instantly betrayed the chaotic storm in her mind. After a long agonizing eternity, she finally forced her heavy eyelids open, her tone chillingly resolute and unyielding. I am absolutely under no circumstances giving up on him. Luyun worshipped the ground I walked on for so many grueling years. As long as I remain fiercely, pathologically persistent, there will inevitably come a day when he is forced to recognize the purity of my devotion, And when that day comes, he will absolutely come crawling back to my arms. Witnessing her dive headfirst into this level of manic terminal delusion, Zhang Qingfei completely abandoned any remaining urge to reason with her. She knew all too well that trying to talk sense into a madwoman was a total exercise in futility, leaving her with zero choice but to let her crash and burn on her own terms. After all, some people refuse to believe the stove is hot until they've melted their own flesh off. She casually pulled up Sun Xiu's official surgical logs on her tablet, before calmly dropping a massive bombshell. That kidney belonging to Shen Luyun has successfully been ripped out of Sun Xiu's body. It is currently cryogenically preserved and under lock and key right here in the hospital. Now that the corrupt Sun family has thoroughly discarded him like radioactive waste, he'll be forced to scrape by on basic dialysis just to prolong his pathetic existence. As for his future, I can guarantee his remaining days on this earth will be absolute living hell. Lin Xingxing let out a cold, deeply satisfied nod. I appreciate the update. The absolute second she finished offering her dark gratitude, she ruthlessly ripped the IV line straight out of her arm, secured the medical container holding my stolen kidney along with her essentials, and charged straight back towards City S like a woman possessed. Upon her arrival in City S, every single massive outdoor LED billboard across the metropolis simultaneously flashed to life, broadcasting Lin Xingxing's public apology video. Luyun, I am desperately, completely in love with you. But I am plagued by the horrifying realization that I awakened to this truth far too late. I have inflicted so much unforgivable trauma and agony upon your beautiful soul. But this public confession is an ancient debt I absolutely owe you. I am so deeply, truly sorry. I love you with every fiber of my being. Every sacred landmark we used to frequent back when we were together, and every selfless loving sacrifice you ever made during the era you worshipped me. I have meticulously retraced and reenacted every single one of them. Look closely. I have carved brand new eternal vows onto the bark of our sacred tree. The broken padlock symbolizing our souls on the lover's bridge has officially been replaced by a magnificent, unbreakable new one. In our past life, you were always the one offering divine prayers for my worthless self. But now I have hand-tied a sea of 10,000 crimson vows to honor your name. Furthermore, Mo, I have successfully retrieved your stolen kidney and brought it back to you, ensuring it will never again be desecrated or wasted inside a worthless subhuman parasite. If your soul is drowning in absolute hatred toward me for what I did, or for the monstrous way I aborted our unborn child, then I beg you to violently beat me, slander my name, and humiliate me. Execute whatever sadistic torture you desire upon my flesh, and I will endure it all gladly, just to atone for the blood of our innocent baby. I am down on my hands and knees, utterly begging you, Ariying. Please come back to my arms. Shen Luyun, on the massive towering screens, this once freezing, untouchable billionaire heiress was desperately dropping to one knee, one trembling hand hoisting a flawless multi-carat diamond ring, while her other arm tightly clutched the high-tech medical cooler containing my harvested organ, staring up at this grotesque, theatrical public spectacle. My heart didn't experience even a micro flicker of warmth or emotional resonance. Instead, the display struck me as profoundly pathetic, laughable, and deeply sickening. She couldn't muster a single drop of affection for me across a decade of pure devotion. Yet the exact second she unmasked Sun Xiu's utterly wretched, treacherous nature, she magically awakened to this profound, undying obsession for me. Wow, her brand of romantic devotion is laughably shallow and fickle. The sheer, unadulterated revulsion flashing in He Jixing's eyes was practically overflowing. Luyun, your biological kidney should not be desecrated inside her filthy hands for another second. It absolutely contaminates a literal part of your physical body. I couldn't agree more, which means, unfortunately, we are forced to grant that pest a brief audience. I muttered, my brow furrowing in deep, intensely irritated annoyance. Inside the VIP lounge, Lin Xingxing was pacing back and forth like a nervous, trapped animal. Her eyes kept darting toward the medical cooler resting on the table, knowing damn well that using my harvested organ as bait was a deeply depraved, villainous move. Yet she had completely run out of options. He Jixing had built an absolute fortress of security around me, leaving her with zero window to ambush or approach me naturally. She was forced to deploy this hostage tactic just to corner us into a meeting. She consciously recognized the sickening nature of her actions, but she fully intended to beg for mercy. Lin Xingxing's face was completely taut with anxiety, her bloodless lips pressed together into a sharp, rigid line. Suddenly, the heavy door was abruptly thrown open, and He Jixing and I smoothly stepped into the room side by side, our expressions carved out of the exact same block of freezing, unyielding ice. I am so deeply, truly sorry. Lin Xingxing, Vlisiti. The absolute microsecond that pathetic apology began to escape her lips, I instantly cut her off with a razor-sharp tone. I didn't waste my breath coming here to listen to your voice. The horrific trauma you've inflicted is permanently etched into reality. No matter how many times you drop to your knees and cry, nothing will ever reverse or undo the absolute hell you put me through. I materialized here today for the sole exclusive purpose of reclaiming my stolen kidney. I will never for the rest of eternity grant you absolution. My voice remained chillingly deadpan, devoid of even a micro-flicker of emotional resonance. The frantic light dancing in Lin Xingxing's eyes died out millimeter by millimeter, her lips twisting into a deeply hollow, profoundly bitter grimace. Lu Yun, aside from reclaiming this organ, do you truly harbor that much absolute disgust for my literal presence, Imwatong? I know I've traumatized your soul, Akiokiete, and I know my words can never fix it. But what if you inflict that exact same mutilation right back onto my body? Look at this blade. It's a real combat knife. I beg you to plunge it directly into my heart. If I bleed out and die by your hand, I will embrace death with a smile. Because leaving this room without you means enduring a fate far worse than death as a hollow walking corpse. My universe cannot exist without your light. Shen Lu Yun, as the desperate words poured from her throat, she began closing the distance between us, taking one slow agonizing step after another toward me. He advanced toward my coordinates, closing the distance step by agonizing step. She tightly gripped the razor-sharp combat knife, viciously forcing the lethal weapon directly into my helpless palm. Crimson blood immediately sliced through her bare skin and dripped down, staining the pristine floor an ominous red. Yet she remained utterly unfazed, seemingly immune to the physical torment, forcefully overpowering my grip to drive the blade straight toward her own flesh. Lin Xingxing, have you completely lost your mind, Uck? I stared in pure, unadulterated disbelief at the psychotic spectacle, and screamed at the top of my lungs. The combat knife sliced deep into her abdomen, causing dark, warm blood to erupt from the puncture wound, looking incredibly blinding, horrific, and life-threatening. I desperately tried to open my fingers and discard the weapon, but her manic strength completely pinned my movements, rendering me entirely unable to break free. Jixing's eyes instantly flashed with unhinged malice. He launched a brutal, bone-crushing punch straight to Lin Xingxing's jaw, before violently snapping her fingers back with sickening cracks, ruthlessly forcing her to relinquish her hold. Let go of him this instant. Can't your pathetic blind eyes see that he wants absolutely nothing to do with you? If you're so desperate to end your worthless life, go do it alone. Don't you dare drag him into your suicide stunt and contaminate his hands, as he roared. Jixing grabbed the handle of the embedded weapon himself, and aggressively twisted it deeper into her gut, causing the pool of blood to violently rupture and cascade onto the floor. Noticing that I was spiraling into a severe panic, his gaze shifted to a soothing icy calm as he grounded me. Don't panic, Luyun. This cockroach isn't going to expire from something so trivial. A minor puncture like this will only drain a bit of her useless blood. It's nowhere near fatal. She is merely deploying a disgusting calculated guilt trip to manipulate your empathy and force your pity. The absolute millisecond Jixing's rational words hit my ears, the chaotic panic vanished and a freezing wave of logic washed over me. I cast a chillingly indifferent glance at the bleeding Lin Xingxing. Stop relying on these pathetic psychotic theatrics. Lin Xingxing ikasit. You will never obtain my absolution, and your current obsession doesn't even qualify as genuine love. You are simply suffering from severe withdrawal symptoms, because you no longer have my submissive, unconditional pampering around the clock. Your corporate empire employs a vast army of elite secretaries and assistants. You can easily train any one of them to cater to your every whim. Your luxury estate is fully staffed with elite domestic workers and professional butlers. So even if your health is completely failing, there is an endless lineup of world-class medical experts waiting to manage your treatment. You do not genuinely need me in your life anymore. Inevitably, a day will dawn where you become fully accustomed to my permanent absence. You possess zero need for me and you harbor zero real love for me. Wake up from your pathetic delusion, oh. As the sharp words left my mouth, I violently unleashed a fierce slap across Lin Xingxing's face, desperately attempting to forcefully snap her back to reality. She tightly clutched the bleeding puncture wound in her abdomen, letting out a manic, unhinged laugh that simultaneously echoed with a bottomless, agonizing grief. Shen Lu Yun. Yet, I am truly completely in love with you. Why? Why on earth will you not believe my heart? The agony tearing through my flesh is so blinding. Why can you no longer look at my broken body with the same protective devotion you once had? Why can't we simply reverse time and return to the way things were? Back then, neither of us could survive a single breath without the other, but those secretaries, assistants, servants, and elite physicians, I want absolutely none of them. The only thing my soul desires is you. Lin Xingxing desperately extended her trembling hand to grasp at my clothes, yet her voice grew increasingly faint and breathy with every syllable. The catastrophic loss of blood, compounded by the fact that her severely battered body had never fully healed from her previous trauma, finally became too much for her central nervous system to withstand. Her strength completely failed her and she collapsed into absolute unconsciousness, staring down at her limp, broken form. I didn't experience a single microscopic flicker of empathy. Nor did I feel a grand surge of toxic euphoria from finally extracting my vengeance against her. I merely secured the medical container holding my biological kidney and turned to Jixing, completely exiting her life once and for all. Jixing, I want to completely crush and dismantle Lin Xingxing's entire existence. Only by thoroughly bankrupting her will we guarantee she never possesses the resources to ambush me again. Our previous corporate skirmishes were far too merciful, which is exactly why she still has the luxurious free time to play these psychotic games. My eyes flashed with a freezing, merciless cold as I expressionlessly wiped her disgusting bloodstains off my clothes with pure irritation. Jixing let out an approving nod, tightly intertwining his arm with mine, before murmuring in a smooth, deeply reassuring tone, "Whatever scorched earth tactics you wish to deploy, I am 100% behind you, as long as you promise me you will never look back or return to her toxic embrace." Ultimately, we weren't quite ready to turn this into a literal murder case. So as we exited the premises, we casually dialed emergency services to dispatch an ambulance for her. Inside the sterile hospital ward, the absolute second Lin Xingxing opened her heavy eyelids. Her phone violently vibrated with an urgent call from her head assistant. "Director Lin Chut, you need to forcefully discharge yourself and return to headquarters immediately to manage this catastrophic crisis. That illegitimate son has officially been released from confinement by the old master, and he is utterly unhinged, launching an all-out assault to violently overthrow your position as CEO. Worse, Mr. Shen and the massive He Corporation are relentlessly hammering our stock with a brutal scorched earth blockade. If you do not materialize to spearhead the defense within the next 24 hours, 整个公司就真的要破产了. Our entire corporate empire is going to completely collapse into absolute bankruptcy." Lin Xingxing sucked in a sharp, ragged breath. "Understood. I will forcefully discharge myself and return to the office immediately." The moment she cut the line, her entire soul was submerged in a bottomless ocean of pure despair. No matter what theatrical stunts or self-harm tactics she deployed, I would never feel even a single microgram of pity or remorse for her condition. She had exhausted every single manipulative trick in her playbook. Yet my eyes remained exclusively locked on Jixing with absolute devotion. Is it because Jixing is still standing if I violently crush him into utter ruin? Will Luyun finally have no choice but to turn back and look at me, clinging desperately to this delusionally impossible toxic glimmer of hope? She gritted her teeth through the excruciating pain and forced her way out of the hospital. Over the grueling course of the next several months, she practically lived inside the walls of her executive office, completely losing track of the last time she had even set foot inside her home. Deep, hollow, dark circles permanently bruised the skin beneath her eyes, while bloodshot webs of pure exhaustion thoroughly emapped her corneas, rendering her entire physical appearance shockingly gaunt and completely unrecognizable. Battered by a catastrophic cocktail of internal betrayals and external hostile takeovers, she was forced to spearhead the defense entirely on her own. The sheer weight of it was utterly crushing. In their past life, I was always there as her unbreakable shield, carrying half the crushing corporate burden on my own shoulders to keep her safe. But now Lin Xingxing could only catch a fleeting, agonizing glimpse of my face during high-stakes corporate bidding wars. My business acumen was absolute, and now, having officially joined forces with Jixing, our synergy was completely flawless and terrifyingly efficient. Our corporate empire was booming, radiating absolute vitality and power, standing in stark, blinding contrast to the decaying, stagnant graveyard that was the Lin Group. Slammed by a consecutive series of humiliating losses at the bidding table, her executive judgment began to severely fracture and misfire. Major multi-million-dollar projects systematically imploded due to freak accidents and fatal oversights, as if a catastrophic curse had permanently settled over Lin Xingxing's head. An endless barrage of apocalyptic corporate crises violently detonated one after another, suffocating her completely and leaving her entirely unable to catch her breath, drowning in this endless numbing vortex of 24/7 damage control. She had completely lost track of how long it had been since she actively thought about my face. Only during the dead of night, when her defenses dropped in her dreams, did a blinding, soul-shredding agony rip through her chest, refusing to fade away. During a high-stakes business trip to salvage a crumbling partnership, Lin Xingxing was speeding across a massive towering suspension bridge over the river. Suddenly, the luxury sedan suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure. The speedometer violently spiked, redlining out of control, as the brakes completely died, rendering the vehicle a lethal missile. Following an earth-shattering, metal-crunching explosion, her vehicle violently slammed into the reinforced steel guardrails at terminal velocity. A blinding, bone-shattering agony instantly erupted from both of her lower limbs, before her entire nervous system abruptly blacked out into total paralysis. Her forehead violently split open, drenched in a horrifying cascade of crimson blood, as the completely shattered vehicle careened entirely out of control, breaching the bridge. and plunged straight into the dark, freezing abyss of the lake below, instantly extinguishing the final flickering embers of her consciousness. By the time she finally clawed her way back to reality, the chief physician delivered the crushing verdict: Lin Xingxing's legs were permanently destroyed, leaving absolutely zero medical possibility of a recovery. She had been forcefully dragged right back to square one. Except this time I would never be there to guard her side again. Perhaps this is the twisted justice I deserve. At the very least, she will never be able to disturb my peace again. He absolutely shouldn't be anchored to a pathetic broken cripple ever again. Lin Xingxing thought to herself, drowning in pure unadulterated bitterness, when her consciousness finally resurfaced once more. The suffocating sterile stench of bleach and antiseptic hit her harder and more violently than ever before. Lin Xingxing slowly, painfully forced her heavy eyelids open, her blurry, distorted vision gradually adjusting to the harsh environment. The dreadfully pale, stark white ceiling, the monotonous metallic silhouette of the IV drip stand, and a terrifying, heavy numbness where her lower limbs used to be completely devoid of sensation. "Miss Lin, you are finally awake." The attending physician's voice carried a strictly professional, neutral calm, yet he absolutely couldn't suppress a deep undertone of profound pity. The emergency surgery itself was a clinical success. However, the trauma to your lumbar spine and nerve endings is catastrophic. I am deeply afraid you will be permanently paralyzed, never to walk again for the rest of your life. Permanently paralyzed, then Concise. Those soul-crushing words reverberated through her mind like a massive sledgehammer repeatedly slamming her eardrums. She didn't unleash a manic scream, nor did she shed a single tear. She merely stared blankly at the motionless silhouette of her legs buried beneath the sterile white sheets, completely flat, and utterly hollowed out of all human sensation. As if that entire lower half no longer belonged to her physical anatomy. She had literally traveled in a full agonizing circle right back to the beginning, 5 grueling years ago. She had sacrificed her body to rescue Sun Xiu, letting the falling debris crush her legs to splinters. But during that ancient tragedy, she still possessed my unconditional devotion. Back then, I had dropped to my knees before world-class specialists to beg for a micro-flicker of hope. No. I voluntarily offered my own flesh as a human guinea pig, just to master complex acupuncture therapies for her sake. I spent thousands of hours meticulously massaging her paralyzed limbs, desperately fighting the atrophy. And the exact millisecond she suffered an emotional breakdown from the agonizing phantom pain, I would tightly wrap my arms around her trembling frame and whisper, "Xingxing, I'm right here. I will stay by your side for all of eternity." And now history had brutally repeated itself, stripping away her ability to walk a second time. But I would never cross that hospital threshold to save her again. I had officially chosen He Jixing. I had built a beautiful, thriving new existence, completely separate from her ghost. I was no longer that submissive, self-sacrificing Shen Luyun who would happily burn his entire world to keep her warm. Lin Xingxing weakly twitched the corners of her mouth, attempting to smile, though it looked infinitely more agonizing than weeping. Perhaps this is for the best. I will never for the rest of eternity cross his path or disturb his peace again. A pathetic, paralyzed, sin-stained wretch like Lin Xingxing. What earthly right do I possess to crawl back and beg for his love? When Jiang Qingfei quietly pushed the heavy door open and entered the room, she was carrying a thermal container filled with piping hot steaming porridge. The moment she caught sight of Lin Xingxing staring hollowly at the sterile ceiling, her footsteps abruptly faltered, before she reluctantly forced herself to approach the bedside. "Try to swallow a few bites of this porridge," she murmured, her tone exceptionally gentle. "You've been trapped in a deep, feverish coma for 3 consecutive days." Lin Xingxing didn't flinch or move a single muscle. She merely whispered, "What is the current status of the corporate empire?" Jiang Qingfei instantly lapsed into a heavy, agonizing silence. "The moment you were hospitalized, that ruthless, illegitimate son launched an ambush. He successfully formed a rogue alliance with several corrupt major shareholders to execute a hostile coup. Worse, Shen Luyun and He Jixing are aggressively tightening their economic chokehold from the outside." Lin Xingxing squeezed her heavy eyelids shut, let it all go. She exhaled, her voice utterly defeated. "Tell them they can seize whatever they want." Jiang Qingfei stared down at her in pure, unadulterated disbelief. "Lin Xingxing, you sacrificed blood, sweat, and tears for a grueling decade just to conquer the Lin Corporation. Are you truly going to surrender your life's work without a fight? Even if I conquer the entire world, what would it accomplish?" Lin Xingxing slowly pivoted her neck toward the window, staring out into the bleak ash-gray horizon. "Without his light illuminating my world, absolutely none of this hoarded wealth carries a single drop of meaning." Once upon a time, she genuinely believed that absolute power, elite status, and an empire of gold were the sole purposes of her existence. Later, when Sun Xiu materialized back into her life, She convinced herself that catering to his toxic whims was her divine destiny. But the absolute second I permanently walked out of her life, a brutal, blinding revelation finally shattered her mind. The anchor that had truly kept her soul tethered to sanity all those years was never her psychotic obsession with Sun Tzu. It was the silent, unconditional sanctuary of my undying presence at her side. Yet now, even that final sacred lifeline had been thoroughly evaporated. "Jingfei," she abruptly spoken into the quiet room, her voice sounding as faint and fragile as a drifting feather. "Coordinate the paperwork, Cook. I want to be permanently discharged immediately. Your catastrophic internal injuries haven't even begun to stabilize. It is completely irrelevant." Lin Sing listlessly cut her off, her expression totally dead. "These shattered legs are permanently paralyzed anyway. Rotting in a sterile hospital ward or rotting anywhere else makes absolute zero difference." The afternoon she officially finalized her discharge was blanketed by a heavy overcast sky. Lin Sing sat slumped inside her mechanical wheelchair as Jiang Qingfei quietly wheeled her out through the sliding glass doors of the medical center. She didn't instruct the driver to steer toward the sprawling luxury Lin family estate. Instead, she retreated to a secluded, long-forgotten penthouse apartment that she had casually purchased during the early days of her career. The layout was incredibly compact, but the sweeping panoramic view of the riverfront was breathtaking. "Are you truly never returning to the mansion?" Jiang Qingfei asked, her hands halting midair while organizing the sparse luggage. Lin Sing manually toggled her motorized wheelchair, gliding smoothly toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, to stare blankly at the relentless rushing currents of the river outside. That massive house is entirely haunted by the phantom of his devotion. Literally, every single square inch of that estate bears the permanent fingerprint of his existence. Inside that kitchen, he spent thousands of hours meticulously brewing nourishing soups to stabilize my health. In the center of that living room, he sat by my side through endless hours of mindless variety shows. Out on the balcony, he gently washed and hung my delicate garments to dry. And inside the master bedroom, the exact second a violent nightmare jerked me awake, his arms would instantly envelop my shivering frame to ground me. I physically cannot survive inside those walls. Crossing that threshold will only serve as a constant torturous reminder of the priceless, irreplaceable sanctuary I completely destroyed. "What about Sun Tzu?" Jiang Qingfei inquired, her brow furrowing. "That parasitic fraud still owes you a massive lifelong debt of atonement." Lin Sing let out a faint hollow shake of her head. "There is absolutely no point anymore. Dedicating your life to pure hatred is an exhausting, soul-withering burden. Hating Sun Tzu, loathing my own monstrous decisions, and cursing the absolute unhinged tragedy of this entire decade? Fatigue. I have entirely run out of the vital energy required to care. As for that cryogenic medical cooler preserving my stolen kidney, she officially tasked Jiang Qingfei with transporting it straight back to City S in Kakaktia, delivering it directly into He Jixing's custody, without attaching a single sentence, letter, or message. That biological organ is his sacred property, and it is only natural that it should be returned to its rightful owner. As for how he ultimately chooses to handle or dispose of it, it is entirely beyond my station to interfere. The chronological pages of time slowly flipped forward day by agonizing day, bleeding into a monotonous lifestyle defined by near-total numbness. Lin Sing forced herself to master the grueling reality of life in a wheelchair, relearning how to dress herself, cook basic meals, and perform daily hygiene without assistance, forcing her broken body to execute agonizing transfers from the mechanical seat to the mattress, and onto the sofa, gradually adapting to the suffocating weight of society's pitying glances and prying curiosity. She systematically liquidated the overwhelming majority of her powerhouse shares in the Lin Group, retaining only a minuscule fraction to fund her basic living costs. Predictably, that illegitimate son successfully seized absolute dictatorial control over the family corporate board exactly as he intended. Yet, she didn't harbor a single drop of resentment regarding his corporate backstabbing and plotting, the high-stakes corporate warfare that used to ignite a wild, intoxicating fire in her veins, now struck her as profoundly hollow, exhausting, and utterly meaningless. But now looking at it, it registers as completely bland and utterly flavorless. Jiang Qingfei regularly visited her apartment 2 or 3 times a week, supplying vital groceries, daily essentials, and casual conversation to break the silence. Yet for the vast majority of the grueling week, Lin Xingxing remained in total isolation. She gradually retreated into literature, devouring complex volumes of philosophy and psychology she had historically deemed a waste of time. She also experimented with canvas painting, and though her artistic execution was undeniably horrific, it served its sole purpose of burning through the empty hours of her day. Every now and then, ambient murmurs regarding He Jixing and my current exploits would filter through her radar. She caught wind that our business trajectory in City S was absolutely skyrocketing, with our core corporate infrastructure systematically doubling its financial footprint. She heard that our romantic bond was exceptionally deep and ironclad, frequently dominating the spotlight side by side at elite industry galas. She eventually learned that Hajik Singh had successfully conceived a child. A paparazzi snapshot capturing my hyperprotective, fiercely tender demeanor while escorting her to a prenatal checkup was officially printed inside a minuscule column of a major financial magazine. Lin Singh locked her gaze onto that grainy, out-of-focus silhouette for what felt like an eternity. Then she quietly closed the publication and returned to her easel, continuing to sketch her perpetually flawed, deeply chaotic painting of a riverfront sunset. The acute, blinding agony had finally evaporated. It truly completely stopped hurting. Instead, a specific sector of her core felt entirely hollowed out, leaving nothing but a vast expanse of zero. 3 months down the line, on a completely unremarkable afternoon, Lin Sing's phone suddenly vibrated with an incoming call from an unregistered anonymous number. She hesitated for a brief tense moment before sliding to answer. It's me. Sun Siu's profoundly weak, trembling voice wheezed through the speaker line. I am desperately begging to see your face one final time. Lin Sing maintained a stone-cold, unbroken silence. I am currently confined to a terminal hospital ward. Sun Siu's breath cracked into a pathetic, choked-up sob. My remaining kidney is in total acute failure. I only have a handful of days left to live. Sing, I was monstrously wrong. I am truly deeply struck by the horrific reality of my sins. Can you please, just for a brief moment, come and look at me before I pass? Lin Sing gripped the smartphone against her ear, letting the silence stretch on endlessly. Once upon a time, this exact vocal frequency possessed the absolute power to make her throw her entire life away. The moment that Fraud wept, her entire soul would bleed with protective anguish. The moment he felt a micro-flicker of pain, she would desperately yearn to shoulder the physical torment in his stead. Whatever luxury he demanded, she would hand it over on a silver platter, even if it required sacrificing her own biological existence. But right now, her heart registered absolutely nothing but a vast, motionless flatline. Sun Siu, she finally articulated, cutting through the weeping. Her delivery was chillingly level, completely devoid of hatred or warmth. Our ledger has officially been balanced. There is nothing left between us. No, it hasn't. Sun Siu cut in with sheer hyperventilating desperation. I still owe your soul a lifetime of immense retribution, and a proper unconditional apology. And I owe Shen Luyun a monumental, profoundly heavy apology as well. Sing, I am begging you to let me look into your eyes and confess this, please. I am literally on my knees. Save your breath, it is completely redundant. Lin Sing declared coldly, your pathetic late-stage regret carries absolutely zero weight or purpose for Luyun anymore. And frankly, it means absolutely nothing to me either. Goodbye, Siu. She instantly severed the phone connection, permanently blocking the contact number with a swift flick of her finger, before refocusing her gaze back toward the sweeping horizon outside. A lone cargo vessel was lazily slicing through the smooth, rolling currents of the river, as the burning embers of the setting sun painted the water a blinding liquid gold crimson. It was breathtakingly gorgeous. Following the swift passage of another 2 months, Zhang Qingfei materialized at the penthouse with a final update. Sun Siu has officially passed away. The rigorous dialysis treatment ultimately failed to sustain his failing system for long. He drew his final breath during a bleak, torrential rainstorm, entirely isolated, without a single human soul standing by his bedside. Lin Sing absorbed the news, letting out nothing more than a faint, detached murmur of acknowledgement. He desperately bribed a nurse to relay a final dying message directly to you, Zhang Qingfei added softly. He swore that if a next life exists within the cosmos, he will dedicate every single second of it to loving you correctly. Lin Sing let out a faint, amused chuckle, slowly shaking her head in utter dismissal. I harbor absolute zero desire for his imaginary next life. She articulated softly, in fact, I deeply regret having a single second of overlapping history with him in this current life. Zhang Qingfei locked her eyes onto her serene, stone-faced profile, abruptly realizing that the fragile woman currently paralyzed in this mechanical wheelchair, and the historically arrogant, toxic powerhouse tycoon, who would gladly burn the world down in a manic fit of love, were no longer the same entity. She had finally truly evolved and grown up. Yet the devastating soul-crushing currency required to purchase this maturity was far too catastrophic. As the golden leaves of autumn began to coat the city's streets, Lin Sing officially finalized her plans to permanently exit the capital. Where do you intend to migrate? Zhang Qingfei inquired with deep concern. I haven't mapped out a definitive coordinate just yet. Lin Sing murmured, her eyes tracing the vast continents printed on the world map spread across her lap. Perhaps I will migrate toward the tropical southern coast and scout out a secluded, sleepy town. A geographic location where the climate is permanently warm and mild, which is infinitely more merciful on my paralyzed lower limbs. She paused for a brief, heavy heartbeat, though, before adding softly, "Or perhaps I will catch a flight overseas to immerse myself in entirely foreign landscapes. Entirely on your own. Entirely on my own." Jiang Qingfei's eyelids instantly welled up with hot emotional tears. "Xing Xing, I can easily pack my life up and accompany you on this journey. There is absolutely no need for you to sacrifice your life for mine." Lin Xing reassured her, gently squeezing her hand with a genuinely peaceful smile. That marked the very first genuine, heartfelt smile to cross her face since the horrific car crash. "Qingfei, you deserve to live your own beautiful life unburdened by my shadow. For everything you've done for me over these grueling years, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Do you ever plan on returning here?" Lin Xing turned her head back toward the expansive floor-to-ceiling window, letting a long silence stretch out before whispering, "No, I am never coming back. This metropolis is entirely suffocating, haunted by far too many ghosts." She desperately required an absolute clean slate to rebuild her life. A completely fresh start, detached from my memory, detached from Sun Tzu, unshackled from the chains of her dark history, and completely divorced from the foolish, blind wretch she used to be. On the final evening before her departure, Lin Xing navigated her wheelchair completely alone down to the riverbank. The autumn night breeze carried an exceptionally biting, piercing chill. She wrapped her thick blanket tightly around her frail shoulders, staring hollowly across the black water at the blinding, brilliant neon lights of the thriving skyline. Suddenly, her smartphone let out a single sharp vibration in her hand. It was an incoming text message originating from an unregistered anonymous number. The notification contained a grand total of 2 simple words: "Take care." There was absolutely no signature appended to the text, yet her heart recognized the sender instantly. I had officially learned of her imminent departure from Jiang Qingfei. Lin Xing locked her gaze onto those 2 simple words for an agonizingly long time. Before her thumb slowly, deliberately depressed the delete key, she chose not to send a single syllable in response. Certain final goodbyes in this life require absolutely zero verbal closure. Certain tragic chapters are best laid to rest in absolute golden silence. When the next morning finally dawned, Lin Xing successfully boarded the high-speed rail bound for the tropical south. She hadn't burdened herself with a mountain of unnecessary luggage, possessing merely a single suitcase, her absolute bare daily essentials, and that specific sunset riverfront canvas she had meticulously labored over for consecutive months, which had finally matured into something vaguely presentable. Jiang Qingfei arrived at the platform to see her off, her composure completely breaking down into a messy torrent of tears. "The absolute second you arrive at your destination, promise me you'll check in. If anything goes wrong, you must call my number immediately. If you ever find yourself running low on capital, just tell me. Please do not compromise your comfort or suffer in silence." Lin Xing gently nodded, accepting every frantic instruction. She leaned forward to wrap her arms around her friend one final time. "I'm leaving now," she murmured softly, before toggling her motorized wheelchair to glide slowly through the boarding gates, never once looking back at the life she left behind. With a heavy mechanical hum, the high-speed train violently accelerated, and the familiar landscapes outside her window began to rapidly blur into the past, swiftly receding out of sight. Lin Xing watched this bustling metropolis where she had spent over 20 years of her life gradually vanish into the horizon, an unshakable, profound peace settling over her soul. She suddenly recalled a specific sentence I had whispered to her all those years ago. "Xing, romance isn't the absolute center of the universe. You truly deserve a much brighter, grander future." Back then, she had completely brushed it off with total disdain, convinced I was merely throwing a petty tantrum out of pure jealousy, just spouting pretty meaningless lies to save face. But sitting here now, the brutal reality finally clicked. I had been entirely right from the very start. Romantic obsession is absolutely not the entirety of human existence. She had utterly destroyed her chance at love, permanently lost the use of both her legs, and completely forfeited every single drop of luxury she once proudly owned. Yet against all odds, her heart was still beating. And as long as blood keeps pumping through her veins, an infinite realm of new possibilities still exists. The radiant afternoon sunlight pierced right through the train window, blanketing Lin Xing in a warm, comforting embrace as she slowly closed her eyes, gently exhaling the final remnants of her heavy burdens. Goodbye forever, Shen Luyun. Goodbye to the foolish, toxic Lin Xing of the past. From this exact moment onward, she was finally truly going to live entirely for herself. The high-speed rail roared forward, carrying her swiftly toward a completely uncharted destiny, where a brand new dawn was already waiting to break.